Initiating podcast download. Prepare yourself. Put on your spandex. Lace up your boots. Wrap your wrists. Hide your razor blade. Head to gorilla position. Grease up your hair. Apply baby oil. Okay, apply more baby oil. Get into gimmick. Keep your ears open and your mouth shut. Have fun and be safe out there, brother. Welcome to Iron on Wrestling. Now your host, Gregory Iron.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Iron on Wrestling with Gregory Iron. I am your host, Gregory Iron, and this is episode 91. And today we have a very special guest. It is my good friend Adam Pearson. He is a journalist, a motivational speaker. He's an actor. He's a producer. He's many things, but he's also a huge wrestling fan. And we're going to talk about his story, living with NF. We're also going to talk about some of his favorite wrestling moments, what made him a fan, and just...
Pardon the interruption. It's Aaron Bauer, or how I like to refer myself, Juliet. And you are my Romeo.
Okay, way to make it weird right off the bat.
It's weird?
A little bit, yeah.
Remember that episode we did for Patreon exclusive, where one of our patrons wanted to know why I had this obsession with calling tag teams boyfriends?
Yeah, I vaguely recall that.
Okay, well...
Yeah, that was Sam Rosales. Shout out to
Sam. Let me go further. Let me delve deeper into the situation here. Let me give you a little peek behind the scenes. In this industry, in this business, when two people are in a feud, two performers are in a feud, it's known as that they're married.
Sure.
So I've always kind of thought, well, what if you tag team with somebody? You're not married. You guys are boyfriends.
Okay, I got you.
Okay.
So when you're a tag team, like, things are good.
Yes.
You guys are in a nice romantic relationship, and potentially at some point you're going to go to the next level where you have to get married or feud.
Right.
Because most marriages end up being very abusive, domestic, violent type relationships. Is that why?
Not all are like that.
What?
Did you?
I just thought that was the progression.
I know that's something you've experienced in your life. I've experienced it in mine when, a lot of my partners have physically abused me.
Oh, boy. It's getting dark real quick. We're not even 5 minutes in here. All right.
Let's go with it, right?
Sure, if you want to go here.
Okay,
Jesus
so I went there.
Christ.
And so I figure that's what's going to happen with you and I, Greg.
You think we're going to come to fisticuffs?
On the podcast, probably, because we're partners. I think, you're my boyfriend.
Okay.
You are my Romeo. I'm your Juliet. Eventually, things are going to go awry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's delve into this week's episode.
It's a love story.
Yeah.
Baby, just say yes.
Okay. Well, later in the show, we're going to have Adam Pearson, whose his story is...
The WWE commissioner?
That's Adam Pearce.
Son.
No.
It's Adam Pearce's son?
No. This is
Adam Pearce's son is going to be on the show?
This is Adam Pearson.
Junior?
You guys are going to love his story. He's an identical twin. Both him and his brother suffer from NF1. I shouldn't even say suffer, because you know what? They're not suffering. They're living their lives. And just a great story. I had a great time talking to him. You guys are going to love this conversation later in the show. But before that...
I know you didn't really mean to say like he was suffering from something.
Right.
But I wanted to bring this up earlier because I thought of this while I was stuck in my COVID-induced bed and four walls.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, okay, when I go, if I succumb to this COVID, I don't want Greg to open the show by saying Aaron lost his battle with COVID. I cannot stand, I despise when someone says that so-and-so lost their battle with, whether it be cancer, COVID, some other disease. Stop saying it. I don't want the last memory of me to be that I did a job. I did enough jobs in my life.
It's true.
In a wrestling ring, in life. No, when I die, don't say that I lost my battle with whatever I lost. I got diabetes.
I understand because like you're such a loser throughout the course of your life that you also don't want to be a loser in death.
In the afterlife. Exactly. I put in my work here. I paid my dues.
Yeah.
I'm still paying dues.
So perhaps maybe death would be an escape for you and maybe a win of some sorts.
That I don't know. But what I do know is I don't want motherfuckers to be like, he lost his battle. And I don't want people to, I want to change the trend. Let's not say somebody died from something and that they lost their battle with. No, I don't want somebody to be known as somebody who lost something. Your last memory is you lost?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I don't do no jobs.
All right. Aaron Bauer doesn't lay down for nobody. But, it's something I didn't even think about. Adam suffers from NF1. I think you remember a few years back, I did a thing with a kid by the name of Chase that suffered from NF2. So in Adam's case, which again, we'll talk to him about it later, he's got tumors throughout his body as well as his twin brother. And in Adam's case, it's most notably in his face. He has non-cancerous tumors.
Mm-hmm.
In the case of Chase, and with his NF2, Chase had cancerous tumors throughout his entire body. He was a young boy, probably about 8 years old. And I remember Jason Maples, promoter in Indiana, who hooked us up with meeting Bobby Heenan back for that Heroes and Legends show a few years back. I worked for Jason many of times. He was one of my first outside of Ohio bookings in Indiana. I used to run in an old theater. It was really cool. And Jason reached out to me and said there was a young man whose dream was to be a pro wrestler, and he was probably at some point going to become terminal because of this NF2, and because one of his arms did not work, and he was much like me, he thought that my story would resonate with him, and asked how much money I would need to come and work out with the kid in a ring, and I said $0.
Mm-hmm.
Let me come in and do this. And I found out a day that was available, and I drove out to Indiana. I think it was sometime during the week. And back in the day, I put some pictures of it on my social media, and I'll probably repost them again on the Iron on Wrestling social media for you guys. But Chase and I worked out, and he was a spunky little kid, and I taught him a few chain wrestling moves, and obviously I wasn't having him bump around, but it was... He actually gave me a curb stomp. I let him curb stomp me, which was
what?
Well, yeah, because Seth Rollins was his favorite guy, so I let him do that, and I was like, sure, I'll sell the.
No, you should have let him do that power bomb that he does that injured Sting.
No, not interested in that. I don't think he had injured Sting yet either. So no buckle bombs for me. But Chase was a good kid, and a couple years after we worked together, he ended up passing away. But I'd like to think that. Even it was a battle with NF2 for sure, but I don't think Chase lost. He lived a good life, even though it was short, and he got to do a lot of cool things, especially within wrestling. And I know he got to meet a lot of WWE superstars. He was a good kid, but I really don't have any relation to that other than Adam has NF1, but that just kind of popped in my brain. But let's talk about some more interesting news. This past week, last Saturday, to be more specific, it aired on IWTV. As this is being broadcast, it should be available to replay. 440 invaded H2O, and it was not a good night for Matt Tremont and his students because we showed up, And not only did we show up, myself, Eric Ryan, and Ricky Shane Page, but we showed up with a new member.
Wait, before you get to that.
What?
Was that the first time 440 invaded H2O?
No, this is the third time we've been there.
Okay.
The second time was when Atticus and I drove all the way out to New Jersey just to beat up one of their students, Sean Henderson, and put some skewers in his head, and then we took off in the car. It's a little message that we sent. And then the time before that, we did a couple matches on the Danny Havoc tournament, one of which was Ricky Shane Page retiring Matt Tremont. And, yeah, I think this is going to be a regular thing now because we just want to make Matt Tremont's life a living hell, quite frankly. But, yeah, we have a new member of 440.
You got to tell me who he is. Can you reveal him?
Of course, it already happened. A lot of people were questioning who he was on social media. That answer, the Bev, Bobby Beverly.
Bobby Beverly?
Bobby Beverly is
the master of the thrust.
The master of the thrust. He's
what? Do you trust in the thrust?
Enough to have him in the group, sure. We can't find Eddie Only right now. Don't know where he is. Hasn't contacted us. So we were thinking, like, well, who could we take along with us? Atticus Koger had some other obligations that night. So we went to thinking. We said, who would work in 440 if we were to add another guy? There's no better name than Bobby Beverly.
Yeah. That makes me so happy.
Yeah, I miss Bobby.
Yeah, I had a long history with Bobby.
Yeah.
Bobby was just a little youngster when I took him under my wing.
Well, he's one of the original PWO Academy students during a time when Johnny and I probably shouldn't have been training kids. But he was...
Him and our good friend, the Bachelor, Benjamin Boone, right?
Technically, Boone started at JT school, but he was basically being taught by Johnny.
I remember those two, like, kind of being linked together.
Yeah.
Like, in the infancy of PWO.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, they might have...
B-dubs.
Yes. Okay, there it is.
Name. Yeah.
Yep.
B-dubs. Ben Boone, Bobby Beverly.
Yes. I liked them. I reached out, booked them for Burning River when that happened.
And for those that don't know, Burning River, it was basically a joke.
Yeah, it was a joke, but at the same time, we knew that there was going to be wrestlers who wanted to get in the business more. You know, the guys that were training that wanted to be into, you know, like maybe that promotion.
Yeah.
And they were going to buy tickets, we had heard, to be at the Firestorm event. So I said, well, what if I just booked them for my show? So they're not having to pay for a ticket, and they're on a show, and they're getting experience.
Bobby Beverly was on the show?
Bobby Beverly was on the show. He was, I think he was in a battle royal or something. Honestly, I can't tell you, but I know that I like Bobby. Many stories about Bobby. I know you've probably got some.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we took a lot of road trips with him. One of my favorite Bobby stories that often pops into my brain, because Bobby is he's awesome, but he's so random and scatterbrained sometimes. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, I don't want to know what's going on in his head, because I remember it was just me and him on a road trip from good old NWA PWX one day. We're making no money, just me and him, and we're taking this turn somewhere on 80 on the highway, and it was like dead silent. And I remember we just saw like this plastic bag that looked like something was in it on the side of the road. Something for Emily. And Bobby just goes and says, "Hey, you ever see a plastic bag filled with something on the side of the road and think to yourself, I wonder if there's a dead baby in there?" And I go, and I look at him, I go, "Nope, I can't say that's ever crossed my mind ever." He's like, "I think about it all the time." I'm like, "Oh, all right. That's a weird thing to think about. Not sure why that would pop in your brain." And I brought that up on this road trip with Bobby this weekend, that he told me that. He's like, "I still think about that all the time." I was like, "I'm sure you do. Not much has changed in a decade, Bobby. You idiot." But yeah, I mean, I'm the reason Bobby lost his front teeth.
Oh,
Resolution 2.
Yes, that's right.
It was that famous
when you
match.
got managed by the dude from Men on a Mission,
Oscar.
Yeah.
Representing Mabel, representing Mo, which is something he said in the rap, even though he was not representing Mabel or Mo.
But he was there to represent them.
Sure. Okay. Sure.
Yeah.
Just his mere presence.
Because I just watched that Resolution. I went down a rabbit hole
That's a
this
weird
weekend.
rabbit hole to go
and
down.
I started watching all kinds of old PWO Prime stuff.
Yeah.
And I watched that entrance. I can't tell you that I actually watched the match.
Well, you should go back and watch it because I don't
Okay.
think it's actually that bad. And honestly, Bobby Beverly has been one of my favorite opponents over the years because we just had a chemistry. And it was one of those things where, because I'd like to think Bobby, even though we haven't stayed as close over the years, I think he's been one of my closer friends, particularly when it comes to wrestling matches.
Mhm.
And we had this feud with Sex Appeal, and this match was me, Fontaine, and Naj the Wild Samoan versus
No, there was another guy too, wasn't there?
Kid Cupid was at ringside, but he wasn't
Oh, okay,
involved.
okay.
And against the debuting Sex Appeal, Bobby
Yes.
Shields, Bobby Beverly, and Nikki Valentino. And so me and Bobby
They had a
Beverly,
manager, right?
they were with Dawn Decadence.
Okay.
I don't know where she came from or where she went after that.
She left with Virgil.
Well, yeah, but I don't know what she went on to do. I want to say that she was at OVW and then maybe trained with the Dudleys for a little bit, I think was her backstory.
Okay.
I think. I don't know. But anyways, me and Bobby would always run spots together because we loved working with each other. And even in that match, it's one of the only times I've done it because I trust Bobby. I do like a wheelbarrow stunner, which looks perfect. And that's thanks to Bobby. But at one point in the match, he goes to do the Billy Gunn. And when I say the Billy Gunn, it's the old Billy Gunn cutoff spot where he cuts himself off by jumping up and hitting his head in the post. Billy Gunn did it like nearly every match.
Yeah.
So I can't remember exactly what the spot was, but Bobby shoots me in the corner. Bobby comes running in. I barrel roll out of the way. He does the Billy Gunn. And I remember when I popped up, because I wasn't making the tag right away, I think I had to give him a shot or something. But I remember I rolled and I popped up and I looked at him. And he's looking back at me and he's just covered in blood. His whole chest is like covered in blood all of a sudden. And I'm like, what the fuck just happened? And here to find out afterwards, he had jumped so high and apparently didn't cover up his face.
Yeah.
He just busted his teeth all on the top ring post and he finished the whole match.
Yeah.
But then like he was like worried to just leave right away after the show. And I said, dude, you should probably go to the hospital. You just knocked your teeth out of your mouth. Like maybe go do that. So, of course, in typical Bobby fashion, because he had a tendency to just get random-ass tattoos, he ended up getting like one or two missing teeth tattooed on his arm or something. Yeah. Because he doesn't give a fuck.
In remembrance. You saying the tattoo thing brings to mind one of the first times I met, or not, first time I met Bobby Beverly at an after show, because I had known him from, in the ring and at shows. Bobby was wasted. I mean, some of the stories about Bobby drinking were legendary, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he's like, listen, I don't know what you're about to say, but I know Justice, Ricky
Marty
Shane
Bell?
Page, Eric Ryan, they have crazier stories than I do.
Because
about
I just messaged Marty Bell yesterday to ask her what the story was with her and Justice in the Waffle House. I can't remember exactly what it was. It was like there was a waitress involved, and Bobby and Justice and Marty Bell, and because I had gone out to the Waffle House after a show with them one time, and they were like, "Remember the last time we were at this Waffle House?" And Bobby's like, "No," and they're like, "Yeah, that's because you're so wasted." And then you did this and said this, and whatever it was an awesome story. So when she messages me back, hopefully soon. If not, maybe she can message you. You can ask her. I'd love to tell the story on the air. But for right now, when I saw Bobby after, at one of these after shows, he was as drunk as I think I've ever seen anybody.
Yeah.
And I was a little, scared for him. And as he kept putting the shots down and that, I looked over and he had the shirt with the cut off sleeves on it. And this motherfucker had tattoos that says straight edge.
It doesn't say straight edge.
What's it say?
There's 3 X's.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
it. That's what that means.
Have I ever told you the story about when he got those tattoos?
No.
So he shows up to training one day, and he's got the 3 X's tattooed on his arm. I'm like, oh, why'd you get that? He goes, I'm straight edge. I'm like, no, you're not. You drink and smoke all the time. What are you talking about? He's like, well, I mean, I've been straight edge for like 2 or 3 weeks now. And I'm like, okay, so this is a permanent thing? He's like, I don't know. But if something changes, instead of it meaning that I'm straight edge, I'm going to tell people that means I like porn. That's Bobby Beverly. That is Bobby Beverly.
He never told me that.
So just know that when you saw him,
yes,
it meant that he liked porn.
Okay.
But for like 2 or 3 weeks, it meant that he was straight edge. So
I remember I was like, you're the drunkest person I've ever seen. Why do you have straight edge tattoos?
Yep, that's Bobby Beverly.
That's
man.
pretty incredible.
I love him so much. When he first came to training, he was just one of the only dudes in that class at the PWO Academy that he just got it right away. He was really a natural. But the one thing that sticks out to me about Bobby coming to training is usually his girlfriend, now his wife Sarah, she used to bring him to training, but when she wasn't his ride, he would have to ride to training with a kid by the name of Benny Kearns. So this Benny Kearns.
Uh-huh.
Me and Bobby were literally just talking about this dude. He was like really tiny and skinny.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there was anything, like he wasn't developmentally disabled,
mm-hmm.
but he was a weirdo. Okay. And every time he bumped in training, well, first of all, literally Bobby brought this up and I was like, I forgot he did that. Like Stuart from Mad TV.
Okay.
Do you remember Stuart?
A little bit. I didn't really watch it.
He was the guy that would go, look what I can do. And then he would like do something with his mom. Like this dude would literally be like, look what I could do. And then he would like just kind of jump shittily to the second rope.
So you guys had, hold on, Ben Boone, yeah, Bobby Beverly, and this guy's name was Benny
Kearns.
So you naturally were going to change his name to Benny Burns?
I mean, we knew he was never going to make it because I bring this up. Mm-hmm. Every time he would bump, he would not hit his head. He would tuck his chin, but every time he would bump, he would start like blinking excessively and like slowly pick his head up off the mat and almost like he was having a seizure or something.
Right.
And me and Johnny would always be like, dude, what the hell is going on? And we'd be like, you okay, man? He's like, yeah, look what I could do. And then he would just like jump up to the top rope and I'd be like, what is wrong with this dude? So like, yeah, me and Bobby were literally just talking about Benny Kearns, just like, he was just like
Benny Burns.
He's like, I don't know what that dude's deal was, but fuck it, it was a ride for me. He lived in the area, and so. But like, also, side note, I created this video, which you folks can look up on YouTube because Bobby had brought this up. Man, you know what I'm talking about. I didn't have a job at the time, and I was figuring out video editing, so I made the Bobby Beverly tribute video, Bobby Beverly in the early years. And first thing he said in the locker room this weekend was, hey, man, now that I'm back, could you fucking please take down that Bobby Beverly video? Because that's literally the first thing that comes up when people look me up. And I'm like, nope, never coming down. And Eric Ryan was there. He's like, that's the best video ever.
And it's going on Patreon, I'm sure.
I'll put it up on Patreon. He basically, because I love Bobby, the video starts with a match between, I believe, Dynamite Kid and Tiger Mask because it's one of Bobby's favorite matches. So I remember when I made this video, he had spent the night with me and Johnny. And I had made the video, so the next day we woke him up and I go, hey, Bobby, come, let's go watch that Tiger Mask music video like with Dynamite Q. He's like, fuck yeah, love that music video. And we started watching it, and so the video transitions into a video of Bobby, and he's like real confused. And basically I took the Tupac song, How Do You Want It, and I put...
I forgot all about this video.
I put all of Bobby's botches from his early days and his all of the gimmicks that he wanted because he couldn't figure out who he was. So like Bobby comes out and he's wearing like what looks to be an MVP type outfit. Because I remember him saying like, I think I'm gonna start wearing an outfit like MVP. Yeah. And so on the screen I put his name, Bobby Vontavious Porter, BVP, and or MVB, something like that.
Yeah. That's what I think.
Montel Vontavious Beverly or something.
Yep.
And another name that he wanted to have at one point was Mr. RBI.
What?
He wanted to be called Robert Beverly Incorporated, and he wanted to do a rich gimmick. So he was going to call himself Mr. RBI, not to be confused with the actual Mr. RBI, who's related to Barry Bonds. He wanted his name at one point, and I kid you not, and today he'll try to say it's a joke. He starts saying, I think I'm going to make my name Bob Van Dam. I was like, you can't be Bob Van Dam. You can't be Bob Van Dam. He's like, no, it sounds cool. I'm like, because Rob Van Dam is a thing. That's the only reason why you think
Bob
that sounds
Van Dam
cool.
is the opposite of sounding cool.
Yeah, like you can't be
you
Bob
just
Van
ruined
Dam.
the Van Dam name.
So like 1 month he would wear this MVP outfit, and the next month he would wear a fucking pair of pleather shorts with a star on them that he got from High Spots, whatever the fuck. He was like definitely trying to find himself. So in this music video, I put that, and of course my favorite botch of all time when he's wrestling Josh Prohibition, and Josh starts throwing jabs at him, and he sells it, like a little delayed, like a little delayed, to the point where Josh just starts beating the shit out of him and doing a violence party on him and like kicking him for real. I say that video's worth watching, but you can't take away from the talent that Bobby Beverly is. Like he's always been awesome. I made that video to fuck with him, but like, man, I loved working with him in PWO, and I loved watching his work, particularly in recent years with Eric Ryan as the Young Studs. Like, you know, originally the Young Studs were just kind of thrown together after, well, you probably know better than I do. For whatever reason, did TJ Dynamite take time off, or what was the case?
Yeah, Vince, I think, kept Vince and Ricky were real stiff with those guys, with Eric and TJ, and TJ was catching the worst of it. And at AIW one time, TJ was in the ring, and Vince and Ricky asked for some chairs, and then like the whole Terry Funk incident started happening in ECW. It was like Funk and Jack and
Fontaine was in the back, and he goes, "Wow, TJ Dynamite's doing a great Devon sell," and then someone said, "No, he's having a seizure."
Yes, and back then, I didn't know first aid and CPR and stuff like that, and I was Ricky and Vince's manager, so I just took my tie off, and I held TJ to the ground with like my knee so that he wasn't flopping everywhere, and when his head kept hitting the concrete pavement, I used my tie into like a choke, like so it looked like I was choking him.
Yeah.
But it was really like holding his head up, so it stopped. It would prevent him from bouncing it off the concrete anymore.
I got you. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think he was just like, "Fuck this, it's not worth it."
Yeah. So Bobby Beverly took his place, and the Young Studs, they had good chemistry even back then, and I think they liked working with each other.
You know how the name came about?
I have no idea.
They were working out in the ring, and it was right before, a few, like half hour before doors open or whatever. And Chandler Biggins looked over and he was like, "Yo, Fresh." That was what they called me. He's like, "We need a name for these guys for our new tag team here." And
I thought Eric and TJ were already the Young Studs.
yeah, well, then the other one came in, but you just fucking bear with me.
I'm sorry. All right.
Okay. So I looked at him and I said, "You know what? They remind me of the Young Stallions from the WWF. Like just a bunch of jobbers. They're like good-looking kids." And everybody kind of liked the name. And I said, "What if we call them the Younger Studs or the Younger Stallions?" And Biggins was like, "That's cease and desist all day." Because AIW had just started getting a bunch of cease and desist about random things. So Biggins was like, "Let's go with Young Studs." And so that's where the name came from. And then TJ left and Bobby came in.
Yeah.
So,
but I just like the evolution because they just were two good-looking kids in like pleather shorts back then. Or
yeah.
Eric Ryan kind of tried to emulate CM Punk in his look. And you fast forward when Bobby Beverly, after he took a hiatus, had a couple of kids, he comes back. The Young Studs sort of evolved. I mean, Eric Ryan had evolved while Bobby was gone. He became this deathmatch guy, was a little bit more brutal in his matches, and Bobby was always an ass beater. So Bobby comes back in this flannel and these shorts, and they just were stomping the shit out of dudes. And I love that version of the Young Studs, and I think that's what we're going to get in 440, and I can't wait to watch it.
well, they imploded. The Young Studs imploded, and they ended up culminated in a match at a Absolution, and that was when I was transitioning from being a manager into the commentary booth. And so those two faced each other, and I think Bobby shaved Eric's head. Does that sound right?
I don't know.
I think that's what happened. I think it was a hair match or something.
Okay.
But I remember the tagline was "The young studs explode," and we were doing this little thing called Intense TV for AIW, and the whole time I just kept fucking with the producers and Pedro, who was my co-host, Pedro DeLuca, the AIW ring announcer.
Okay.
And he just kept saying, "I can't wait for the young studs to explode." And I was like, "Oh, that sounds so hot." And we'd have to keep retaking it because, and I could say, "Why do you keep doing that?" And I was like, "How about we change it to implode instead of explode?" It sounds real porno.
It really does.
Yeah. And then if you try to, Google young studs explode.
I'm sure we'll get some interesting stuff.
Young studs in the shower wrestling each other.
Oh.
Nothing.
Okay. You're Googling this stuff quite often, huh?
Never mind.
Okay.
In the sauna.
What?
Nothing. Can we talk about, real quick, when Bobby broke his nose?
Sure.
Do you remember it?
Nope.
Maybe you weren't there. And Bobby broke his nose in a match, and we go down to the locker room. I think it was in a basement of a bar, and everybody's trying to figure out what we're gonna do to help Bobby. And he's just gushing blood everywhere. I want to say this was at the Agora.
Okay.
And me and Bobby go up to the bar, and we get some drinks. He throws back a few shots, which is perfect because, he's bleeding profusely and he's consuming alcohol.
Yeah.
But he goes, I said, "There's only one thing we can do. We got to realign your nose, and we got to do it with a spoon." So the manager of the club comes out and says, "What can we do to help?" And I said, "We need a metal spoon and like a hammer." And we were going to realign his nose. And we went down to the basement, and I gave it a couple whacks, and it didn't work. And I want to say it was Josh Prohibition who ended up fixing his nose. But isn't that ridiculous? Like, what do we do?
I mean, no medical staff present, so you got to make the best of what you got.
I think I might have been first aid and CPR certified. That was like right when I got that. So maybe I thought I was doing something.
Some real MacGyver shit there.
Well, look it up. I mean, it's a real thing.
I'm sure, but still, It's ridiculous. Well,
I can't believe he let people do that. But it was the Bev. He's like, "All right,
he doesn't care.
Let me throw down this little bit of whiskey."
Yeah.
And I probably don't have it anymore, but I had a picture of us, hitting his nose with a spoon and shit.
Well, maybe at some point, because I know there's more stories, we got to have Eric Ryan and Bobby on the show together. I know we've been meaning to have them individually, but I think together is the best scenario.
Oh, for sure.
So we'll have to work
Hey,
that out.
nice picture that you guys posted. 440, little picture at the diner or wherever you guys were. Looked like a little fancy schmancy place that you guys went to.
Called the Cinder Bar, I believe. Out there in New Jersey.
You guys were eating like kings, huh?
Yes, we were. Well, it was very expensive. Actually.
Photo made me smile.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean...
Bobby Beverly with that stupid-ass hat.
Well, the hat is so good because when I first saw the video that somebody had posted online, I went, "The fuck happened to Eddie Only?" and then you sent me something, and I said, "Yeah, who's this guy? What am I looking at?" I said. And then you said it's the Bev, and I was like, "Oh, snap!"
Well, like I said, I don't know where Eddie is, but while he's missing, I think Bobby really fits the void that Eddie Only has left. I mean, Eddie Only is a scumbag. Bobby Beverly was the original scumbag. So
look at your table there in that picture. I had managed everybody at some point in my life or another. All you little 440 guys. Because I know how to pick young talent. You know, Bobby Beverly, manage Eric Ryan. I manage them together and individually at times.
Yeah.
Ricky Shane Page, managed him as Christian Faith. So, and then there was, well, you were there too, but I never managed you. But again, I only picked the good young talent. So.
Okay, you managed me at one of those Murray Ridge shows.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did.
No, I didn't. We flipped the script. I was going to manage you, but we went with the other idea where
you're in the opposite
Derek
corner.
Direction would call me out. I would manage him.
I mean, you were basically my advocate when I started the whole thing with Veda, so that sort of counts.
Okay.
You
I'll go with
you were
that.
pretty much part of the group. So.
All right. So outside of you, I know how to pick good young talent.
All right. Anyways. But yeah, at some point we'll get the Bev on here, but enough about Bobby Beverly. Let's talk about something that's important right now.
All right. Well, I didn't know we were getting real serious, but
It's a pretty serious situation. You know,
Yeah.
often in my matches
uh-huh.
over the past few years, I've gained a bit of notoriety
Yes.
for my second rope and in some cases top rope hurricanrana.
Uh-huh.
Because before I perform this maneuver, I usually yell to my opponent, suck my balls, and then I execute this hurricanrana. But you know, even when I'm facing a hated rival, I would never want to throw my balls at an individual and tell them to suck them without having it manscaped properly.
Ah, yes. Hey, you know, we talked about this last week.
Mm-hmm.
My balls are still smooth.
As they should be, because we got our Manscaped Lawnmower 3.0.
Right.
And I got to tell you, it does the job like no other piece of equipment that I've ever taken to my testicles.
No, usually something tears you up.
Yeah.
You know, something fierce. Something like what happened to me. Blood and ass and spit and everything was
Ass?
everywhere.
What?
Yeah, sweat, everything. So, but I use the lawnmower. And man, my stuff is smooth.
And that's what you need. And that's because Manscaped's engineering team spent 18 full months perfecting the greatest ball hair trimmer ever created. I mean, I can't think of one that even comes close to matching this third generation trimmer. Can you?
No, what complements it so well is the ball toner.
The ball toner is very nice to put on to your testicles at really any point. I mean,
I like putting it on
shower.
right after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a bad idea.
And then sometimes I like to massage it in.
Okay.
Like, so, you know, a couple times during the week.
Well, you got to rub it in and then let it air dry a little bit. But also, you know, you get the ball deodorant as well.
Oh, you know what? If you're not using ball deodorant, you can't just use regular deodorant.
Well, I mean,
You can't go regular schmegular.
Think about it like this. You might be saying to yourself, ball deodorant seems weird, but you put deodorant on your armpits.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you put it on probably the smelliest part of your body?
Exactly. Sometimes I rub it up a little bit behind there, too.
Oh, right on the old taint?
Yeah, and sometimes I even accidentally go a little higher.
Okay. What, accidentally?
Yeah, I use 2 fingers.
All right. Well, that's a little bit too much information even for a ball commercial. But one of the best things about the Manscaped Lawnmower 3.0 is the battery life that it has. I mean, this thing lasts for 90 minutes. That means I can watch like 3 30-minute Iron Man matches and still have power to.
Could have probably watched that pay-per-view that was on yesterday. On Sunday.
That pay-per-view was about 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
But you could get through the first 90 minutes, no problem.
Right.
Definitely the first chamber match.
And honestly, I don't know how yours came in, but mine came in fully charged. I totally expected I was going to have to charge this thing first.
The instructions do recommend that you charge when you receive it in the mail. However, mine was also charged. I mean, Manscaped's got you covered.
They do. They got you covered on the ball deodorant, on the ball toner, on the lawnmower. Let me tell you, yesterday was the first day that I wore the boxers that they sent us.
You do also get a free pair of boxer briefs, which is nice. I mean, they make even your junk look presentable.
Oh, it looks so presentable. Here, look right now.
No, come on, man.
Greg, come on, take a look.
Listen, just
Nobody else is seeing it right now.
No, I don't care. Just listen.
Should we put a video out on Patreon?
Nope, shouldn't do that. Just listen. it's important to keep your man goods in check, and Manscaped is going to help you do that. And we're going to help you do that here on the podcast, because if you go to www.manscaped.com, you can get your Manscaped Lawnmower 3.0
Check
in a
your
wide
text messages
variety
right now, Greg.
of what?
Check your text messages.
I'm not
right
looking.
now.
I can't imagine what you sent me. Anyways, they have the Lawnmower 3.0 in a wide variety of packages in which you can purchase. And if you're going to make a purchase, you should do so by using our promo code PARDON. That's PARDON. Use promo code PARDON, and you'll get 20% off your purchase on manscaped.com. But also, you get free shipping. And it doesn't get much better than that. When you use this stuff, when you use the lawnmower and the ball deodorant and the ball toner, your balls will thank you. And then you can be like me, and you can yell, "Suck my balls," to whoever you want, and you don't have to be ashamed, because your balls are going to be clean and ready to go. If you are listening on iTunes, you just missed Aaron talk about a scam that occurred to him recently with Mr. Rooter, a local pipe cleaning company.
Plumbers? Yeah, that works. Mario Brothers, they ain't.
And we also talked about a girl on Twitter who thought KeyBank was a scam. So if you're not on patreon.com/irononwrestling getting the early and extended episodes, you're missing out. But on top of that, over on Patreon, you get bonus episodes, you get bonus videos, so much content. Patreon.com/irononwrestling starting at $3. We follow you back on social media, but also you get all the audio content. $5 and up, you get the video content as well. It's pretty much the perfect tier, and you also get involved in our Zoom call, which we do every week, including we have another one for this month coming up this weekend. Stay tuned for that information on the social media. So you're going to want to sign up for the $5 and up tier so that you can talk with me directly on Zoom. $9 is our most popular tier. You get to pick a bonus subject that we cover on the podcast, and sometimes that bonus subject bleeds into a regular episode. We like it so much that we want everyone to hear it. So more tiers that you can pick above that, going all the way up to $69. Patreon.com/irononwrestling. It's the place to be. It supports the show, and we thank you for that. If you haven't subscribed to us on iTunes, but also on our YouTube, we're growing over there as well. Go over to iTunes or wherever you download podcasts, rank us 5 stars, leave us a review. Helps create visibility for the podcast. And with nothing else to say, we're going to go to our interview with Adam Pearson. He's got an inspiring story. He's very motivational. You're going to love it. Great dude. Love chatting with him. You're going to love hearing the chat. When we come back, we're going to finish this episode by talking about a recent... Well, it's not recent. We recently listened to... What the fuck am I trying to say? We recently watched an episode of Wrestling Challenge from 1988, and we found out some interesting stipulations for the original Royal Rumble that never came to be.
The Rumble Royal?
We're going to talk about that when we come back after the interview with Adam Pearson. If you're in the pro wrestling or entertainment industry, you probably realize how important it is to have merchandise. Not only does it help you when it comes to bringing in additional revenue for yourself, but the look and feel of merch is a representation of the brand you're building. So you definitely don't want it to suck. Now you're probably asking yourself, well, where can I find a reliable and reputable artist that'll make me a solid t-shirt or pin design that'll make me look and feel like a superstar? Well, I've got the answer for you. Of the Dead Designs. Of the Dead Designs is a one-man merch company ran by artist Juan Ortiz. Now his name may not be familiar to you, but his artwork should be, because you've likely seen his designs on TV and Hot Topic, and he's created some of the highest-selling shirt designs in pro wrestling tees history. Of the Dead Designs has created artwork for the biggest names in WWE, AEW, ROH, Impact, New Japan Pro Wrestling, and beyond. I'm talking guys like Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, CM Punk, The Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, Road Warrior, Animal, The Lucha Brothers, Jungle Boy, even yours truly. Now you're probably saying, whoa, I'm not in the league of The Young Bucks or Hulk Hogan, brother. There's no way I can afford artwork from Of the Dead Designs. Well, I'm here to tell you you're wrong, because Of the Dead Designs is affordable. Juan isn't just looking to create art for the superstars of today. He wants to make it for the superstars of tomorrow as well. And look, Of the Dead Designs doesn't just do artwork for wrestlers. He'll create merch for your band, your podcast, your dance troupe, your kids' pee-wee football team, your daughter's school bake sale, Heck, got a girl that you're afraid to talk to, but you stalk on Instagram and like all of her photos at around 2 or 3 a.m. and you've been hoping that she get the hint like, hey, I really like you, but she has yet to slide in your DMs, and now you think, well, I got to take it to the next level, so you get Of the Dead Designs to use a photo of her and her ex-boyfriend as a reference to create artwork, but you replace the ex's face with your face and then present this custom artwork to the chick with hopes that she'll kiss you directly on the lips. Of the Dead Designs will do that for you. With over 14 years of experience and a portfolio of clients that speaks for itself, Of the Dead Designs will make your artwork at a reasonable price. And hey, if you mention this ad, you'll save $10 on your first design. Of the Dead Designs still has spots open for 2020, so you gotta act fast. If you're interested in a design, contact Of the Dead Designs right now on Instagram at ofthedead209, on Facebook at facebook.com/ofthedeaddesigns, or at his website, ofthedead.weebly.com. Of the Dead Designs, bringing artwork to life. We will return to the Iron on Wrestling podcast in just a moment, but I wanted to take a couple minutes of this time to let you guys know that if you didn't realize it already, Iron on Wrestling is a DIY project. That's right. I'm recording all this myself. I'm editing it in-house all by myself. I'm coming up with the segments and the content, and I'm making sure that each and every Wednesday, by investing countless hours of my personal time, you guys have a new, unique, and entertaining episode blasting into your ear holes. So I hope you don't mind that for a few minutes each episode, you have to deal with a little bit of advertising. Because, quite frankly, I gotta pay those bills somehow. But you know, I don't just pick anyone to be an advertiser on the podcast. When I choose an advertiser for the show, I want to make sure that it's someone that can bring you, the listener, value. I often talk about Of the Dead Designs and my good buddy Juan Ortiz, who can create you a unique logo or t-shirt design for your personal brand. But once that t-shirt design is made, who's going to print it for you? Well, that's where Jesse Massey and SBS Printing comes in. Jesse is a good friend of mine, and much like me in this podcast, he's DIY. For over 10 years, Jesse has been printing t-shirts and hoodies in the comfort of his own home, and he's been the official t-shirt printer for guys like myself, Atticus Koger, Eddie Only, Ricky Shane Page, basically all the 440 guys. My favorite thing about Jesse Massey is the quick turnaround time. When I go to Jesse and I need a shirt design printed right away, I know that he'll have it ready for me within 3 to 5 days, sometimes even quicker. And on top of that, he's affordable. Jesse and SBS can print one color shirt designs for as low as $5. $5. Where are you going to find another deal like that? Now you're probably thinking at a price like that, there's no way these could be quality, long-lasting prints. Wrong! They're super high quality and they're going to last you a lifetime. Jesse and SBS can print you t-shirts, zip-up hoodies, sweaters, and so much more. I encourage you to hit up Jesse right now. Shoot him an email at antisepticmaxrock@gmail.com. That's ANTISEPTIC maxrock@gmail.com. With Jesse Massey and SBS, you're going to get the best. That's no BS. Today, I have the distinct honor and pleasure to not talk to a pro wrestler. I've talked to a lot of great pro wrestlers on the show, but this individual, he's a man of multiple skills. He's a journalist. He's a presenter. He's a speaker. He's a producer. He's a writer. He's an actor. He's an advocate for people with disabilities. And most importantly, to me, in this case, he's a diehard wrestling fan. And we're going to talk about a lot of stuff today involving pro wrestling, disabilities, a bunch of stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, Adam Pearson. How are you, my friend?
I am very well, good sir. I am very well. It's a cold, gloomy Monday here in London. not only do we have COVID, but we now live in a world where The Miz is WWE champion.
Yeah,
What the hell is going on, man?
it's strange times. It's like we went back in time to 2011 all over again. Well, we usually don't talk about really current stuff on the podcast, but we'll make an exception in this case. Elimination Chamber, as we record this, happened just last night. What are your thoughts on the show?
I really liked it. There were a lot of things that when they happened, I thought, oh, I'm not sure. But then you think a bit more long term, because it's really easy to react to things in the there and then. You only got to go on Twitter at the moment and like warm yourself on the warm glow of the IWC losing its collective minds.
Right.
But then you think, no, that's really good. Like the SmackDown Chamber, and then Roman coming straight out after and beating Daniel Bryan. They had that really good hope moment where spear into the bell lock, but then you just got the guillotine and rope. Heel Roman Reigns is amazing.
Yes.
Heel Roman Reigns is everything right with our industry right now in the wrestling world. So and then Edge came out and made his decision. The Riddle being US champion, absolutely the correct choice. I'd be interested to know if it was meant to be Keith Lee, who's currently injured.
Yeah.
And then before we knew what we know now, there's that worry of what happens to Lashley now. Turns out quite a lot.
Yeah, no crap, man. Like there's interesting things going to happen on the road to WrestleMania. If you had to make a prediction now, looking at the current situation with the WWE Championship, with Miz being the champion, obviously you would think that Drew McIntyre is still going to be in the equation somehow. What would you guess is going to be the WWE Championship match come WrestleMania?
I think we're going to get Drew, Bobby Lashley, and either Keith Lee, Brock Lesnar, or both.
Okay.
The title.
Okay. That's an interesting scenario. I mean, especially, Keith Lee has been so incredible. You go back just a couple of years back to the Survivor Series when he made his, I guess, not his main roster debut, but it was the first time you really saw him on one of the main programs and how popular he was instantly, the sort of push that they gave him. I think Keith Lee is an incredible performer, and it would be interesting to see him not only in the WWE Championship scenario, but in a scenario where he could be toe-to-toe with Brock Lesnar. I mean, we got that a little bit at the Royal Rumble the previous year, but for it to go even deeper into a professional wrestling match, man, that's a prediction that I like the sound of.
I want them to pick it. One of my friends on Twitter has got this running joke as to how's the card for Pearson Mania going, because I throw out all these like crazy ideas that I want to see happen, and then you see the wrestlers liking it and retweeting it when you tag them in,
right?
And you're like, okay, on to something.
Yeah.
Like I said as a joke, I want to see Karrion Kross and Timothy Thatcher in the fight pit, and then I just get this retweet from Karrion Kross, and I'm like, get in.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like sometimes I'm a lifetime WWE fan, and I'll always be a WWE fan. And obviously, like any organization, they have their missteps. There's stuff that happens that I don't particularly care for. But I think sometimes it's a matter of just you hope that these writers would kind of think outside the box. And we all know at the end of the day that it might not necessarily be the writer's fault because they don't have the final say so in everything that happens. But I like the idea of you just like, thinking outside of the box and trying to come up with these scenarios that, even the wrestlers are fans of. I mean, I like everything you're saying right now.
Well, yeah, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And it's that old idiom, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got.
Yeah.
And again, we had a chat on camera about Sean Ross Sapp, and he has these Sean Ross stats that he goes out. He's like, Matt Riddle's had 9 matches that involve the Hurt Business since November.
Yeah.
And you're like, no. And then you go back and check it out. And you're like, yeah, he legitimately has.
It's ridiculous. It's very ridiculous. Well, you know what? We've already kind of talked about, you brought up Killian Cross. He's in NXT. We're talking about WWE. I followed your stuff for a while. I know you've done podcasts with Wrestle Talk and just you're a huge wrestling fan. That fandom of yours, I guess we got to start sort of from the beginning. That started early. What do you remember being your first memory of professional wrestling?
So my first memory of pro wrestling, I was round my friend Massey's house. We'd have been about 6, 7, 8, and he had the old Silvervision VHS tapes.
Yes.
There was the Hogan one, the Bulldog one, and the Warrior one. And we watched the Hogan one, and it had the Hogan Warrior from Mania 6
Okay. Yeah. That
on
was my
there.
first event. Yeah. That's awesome.
And I was just sitting there watching, going, "This is insane. This is amazing."
Yeah.
And this is before I knew that it was both titles on the line for the first time ever. I didn't truly comprehend what the stakes were in that match, or how big it was beyond the spectacle of what I was watching.
Yeah.
But from then on, I was hooked. I was like, "Yep, this is it now."
Yeah, I mean, there's something about those larger than life performers that, as children, especially in that time frame of WWE, because I mean, we're roughly the same age. There was something about the Warrior and Hogan and Macho Man that they sucked you in, they compelled you. Which wrestlers were you drawn to the most growing up?
Oh, growing up, this is going to sound utterly cliche because everyone says it, but The Undertaker
Yeah,
was just completely out there, never been done. The fact it had the longevity, it had his testament to how good Mark Calloway is at what he does. And obviously Hogan, in the ring, he's made, as we discussed earlier, a few missteps, few falls from grace, and what have you. But I think if we can pull out Hulk Hogan and Terry Bollea and keep them as separate entities, huge Hulk Hogan fan, not completely in love with Terry Bollea,
agreed.
and then the old patriarch in me, Bulldog, David Boy Smith.
Heck yeah, man. I love the British Bulldog. Now, everyone sort of, when they talk about the British Bulldog and maybe their favorite Bulldog match, people tend to lean to that SummerSlam 92 match with Bret at Wembley Stadium. I also enjoy I guess, not the official rematch, but the match that they did a few years later at In Your House with the bloodbath that Bret had. Do you have a particular Bulldog match outside of SummerSlam 92 that you favor?
He had some really good moments. When he did his return back in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what pay-per-view it was. I want to say Unforgiven 99. He had a cracking match with X-Pac. Greatly underrated.
Yeah, well, X-Pac is completely underrated. I mean, everyone talks about this thing called X-Pac heat for a long time, where it's not the heat you want in professional wrestling, right? It's this go away heat. But I never got that impression from X-Pac. Like, I never saw X-Pac as a bad guy and said to myself, well, I hate this guy and he's doing all the wrong things. I think X-Pac heat is a term that is sort of misused. Do you agree with that statement?
Oh, completely and utterly. You hear stories in the locker room back in the day where they had a guy who was on the cusp of breaking through, and they're like, we have to put him in the ring and make him look good. What do? You put him in there with X-Pac, and they make magic.
Yeah.
Such a good wrestler, such a good mind. Like most people from the era, has had his ups and his downs, but he just gets it. He's one of those guys that truly gets the industry and loves the industry, and he was about what can I do for the industry rather than what can this industry do for me. And I have nothing but good things to say about Mr. Sean Waltman.
He's a great guy. I've had the opportunity to meet him a few times, share some locker rooms with him, and it's been nothing but a pleasure. But he started out as a 1-2-3 kid. He obviously becomes X-Pac during the Attitude Era. Now, for me, obviously, I've been bullied as a kid for my disability, right? And we're going to talk about some of that in both of our cases as we progress in this conversation. But I was also bullied for being a wrestling fan, and there were times when I sort of had to be a closeted wrestling fan, but my parents were always like, well, this is something you'll grow out of. Wrestling is just a phase. I think maybe that was their hope. And obviously, as we sit here and talk today, it's a deeper passion and obsession than I could have ever imagined. But there were times during the Attitude Era where I realized, you know what? I don't think this is something I'm going to grow out of. So Adam, you as a fan, were there moments where you slipped out of your wrestling fandom and came back? Did you have to hide this from people at school, or was it just something that you were always very outward about?
I'd always been quite outward about it, and I was sort of a fair weather fan up until around '98. And there was a certain moment, the Survivor Series Deadly Game tournament, where I was like, I'm in now. I'm a week to week guy now. I'm going to be the most obsessed wrestling fan on the face of the earth, and I'm not even going to try and hide it.
Yeah. What was it about the Deadly Game tournament? Because I often say that it was probably in terms of not just Vince Russo booking, because he had a lot of the say so back then, but I think in all of the Attitude Era, it might have been one of the best built stories throughout the course of an entire pay per view.
And it's sort of like the corporation was born, the Rock turns, and it's sort of like the big crescendo of the what's this Vince McMahon character all about? Okay, we know you hate Stone Cold, we get it, but what else is there to this? And then that happened, and you're like, oh my word,
Yeah.
you slick mother, and just it was the first time I remember being seethingly angry at wrestling.
Yeah.
It was the first time I ever bit down on a storyline and kind of got brought into it. Because in your head, you know it's all entertainment, it's all contrived and predetermined and what have you. But when they can take you from the headspace to the heart space, that's when you've created something quite special. And that's where the hook is. That's what turns kind of fanboys into diehards.
Yeah, and I think as wrestlers, that's the only magic that we really have. I often say it because obviously, especially in 2021, people are so smart to professional wrestling and they don't want their intelligence insulted. But I think if you do your job correctly, there are moments where you can suspend that disbelief and you can really get emotionally invested. Like just before we started recording, we sort of brought it up a little bit. Miz winning the WWE Championship. A lot of people are on both sides of the spectrum when it comes to loving Miz or hating the Miz, thinking him being the WWE champion is the right decision or the wrong decision. But at the end of the day, it just proves how good the Miz is because people, whether you love him or hate him, they're emotionally invested.
Oh, completely. It's the old John Cena quote, isn't it? As long as they're making noise, you've done your job.
Yes, 100%. No, we could talk about more wrestling in a little bit, but sort of a segue, one of the things that I was compelled about in hearing your story for the first time was the idea that not only are your circumstances rare, but your circumstances, the discovery of you having NF, that sort of happened through you loving wrestling. You said in an interview that you were probably pretending to be like Hulk Hogan, just playing around, roughhousing, and you ended up bumping your head, and then things went from there. So can you talk to me about that experience of finding out that you had NF, you and your identical twin brother? I think that's important to point out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I should preface this by saying I am in no way blaming Hulk Hogan for my disability.
Okay.
You can pin a lot of things in this lifetime on Hulk Hogan. My disability, not one of them. There's no tape of that anywhere.
Right.
Yeah, no, I just, as you say, I was just like messing around in my room, kind of dicking about, as a 5-year-old does, right? 5-year-olds, by their inherent nature, haven't quite twigged onto evolution yet. And it's only by God's grace and good parenting that their existence doesn't terminate. And yeah, bumped my head on the windowsill, cried. Parents came up, checked the windowsill, checked the child, because housework. And yeah, it came up in a bump, and we thought, oh, we'll put some ice in it, it'll go down. And then I did the same thing again a couple of weeks later, because fast learner. And yeah, it didn't go down. And so we went to doctors and got tests and stuff done. And eventually got the diagnosis of neurofibromatosis type 1 or NF1. And medicine back then was very different to where we are now.
Sure.
In terms of diagnostics. So I also think the medical professionals have developed better people skills. Whereas at this point, the guy just took a medical dictionary off the shelf, read out the definition, patted my mom on the hand, and put it back on the shelf. And even as a 5-year-old, I was already quite good at kind of profiling. And I was just watching this thinking, she's going to headbutt him. My mum's going to headbutt this guy.
Yeah,
Luckily, she didn't. But I could see sort of like the shoulders going back and
sure.
the whole, Bruce Buffer, let's get ready to rumble.
Yeah.
But luckily, we avoided an incident on that day. And then once you've got a diagnosis, you then sort of know what you're dealing with. And so then you can get in touch with the right specialist and get your pathways into the medical world all sorted. And I always encourage disabled people to master your own condition. Learn as much as you can from as many people as you can and know the devil you're dealing with. Because whilst you might not be in control of all of your circumstances, that knowledge will give you a bit more control than you otherwise would have had. So from a young age, I was very much the mindset, I'm going to know as much as I can about this. I'm going to be in the room when the doctors are talking. I'm going to ask questions, and I'm going to, well, not beat this because it's genetic. So I'm always going to have it and always need treatment and checkups and what have you. But I want to be in a situation where I have a condition over this condition has me.
Yeah, no, that's the perfect way of looking at it. Now, here's a question that I was thinking about. Obviously, you were the one that bumped your head, which led to this discovery of having NF. Is it something that when you go to the doctor because you're an identical twin, is it something that they just sort of investigate with you? Or is it something that at some point the doctor says, maybe we should check out his twin brother too to see if he also has NF? Because you both have the condition. It just affects you guys in different ways.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and we both very much see the same specialists and are in conversation with the same people, because mine's more visible. I'm in there a lot more and having more surgeries than Neil does, and I'm very much in the deep waters of the NF world and the disability world. But Neil's also very well taken care of and very well looked after in terms of medicine and practitioners and what have you. So he's not been sidelined at all. And if anything should happen, be it suddenly or over time that we notice, we have relationships now with our medical professionals where I can just fire up an email and get things rolling rather quickly.
For someone that doesn't know anything about NF, how would you explain it? And when you talk in terms of you and your brother, what are the differences? Like, why is it that you, in your case, you have the facial disfigurement and he doesn't? And in his case, he actually has a short-term memory problem.
Yeah. So in genetics, when you're talking about genetic conditions or any kind of genetic traits, you have what they call the genotype, the genes themselves, and then the phenotype, the way those genes then choose to express themselves and manifest. So just because you have a condition, it doesn't mean it's going to present itself in the same way as it does with other people who have the same condition. It's where the saying comes from, if you've met a disabled person, you've met a disabled person.
Right.
There's no one size fits all with any kind of medical condition. And the way NF presents, it affects the 17th chromosome of the human genome. And in the same way that cables are wrapped in plastic, your nerves are wrapped in cells called Schwann cells. And the condition means that those cells grow and multiply exponentially, which causes the growth of non-cancerous tumors called fibromas to grow anywhere on your central nervous system. Like most of mine are on my face and upper torso. I got a little one on my hand. I don't know why I'm doing that on a podcast, but I've done it now. We'll roll with it.
I gotcha.
And that's essentially how it presents in my case. But with Neil, he's got a few of the fibromas. He's got one in his leg, and he's got a couple under his eyebrows, only small ones. He's got, like, you'll understand this reference. He's got Brock Lesnar eyebrows.
Okay, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
And yeah, everything kind of presents itself in different ways. And it's a case of learning to manage those circumstances and work out what the complications could be and find ways to circumnavigate them. but
Yeah.
without becoming kind of bitter, angry, or twisted about it. I think it's really important that for anyone, be they disabled or not, no matter what your circumstances are, you need to live the life you have as opposed to mourn the one that you don't.
Yeah.
And I think we so often forget that we only get one go round at this crazy thing called life. So we better make the most of it. And it's easier to live with failure than regret.
Man, it's like talking to myself right now, but it's one of those things where I think my perspective is much like yours today, but I can't say that it was like that when I first came to terms as a youth with having cerebral palsy. Actually, my situation, to kind of summarize it, is, when I was born, the doctors told my parents I had a stroke, but no one properly conveyed to me what a stroke means. And I had a very religious grandma who was the one that got me into professional wrestling, and I'll love her forever for that. It's the best gift that she could have ever given me. But because of her religion, she would often tell me, and again, no one explained to me what cerebral palsy is and what it does. She would tell me, when you go to sleep at night, if you pray to God and ask him for your hand to get better, it'll get better. And so years pass. Eventually, at one point, I'm 12. I'm living with my aunt and uncle for a little bit. They decide they're going to take me to the doctor with ignorance to figure out how they could fix my hand. So what could we do to treat this? And that's the day in which the doctor sort of gives me a physical, and he says to me, well, you have cerebral palsy. Unless we can fix your brain, you'll always be this way. And I remember going out to my uncle's truck and crying, because I came to this realization that no matter what I do, I'm always going to be bullied and picked on. And I became a very angry young man. Now, you mentioned before that when you start going to these doctors, you were very intent on sitting in and listening and figuring out everything you can know about your disability. And I know from interviews you were bullied as a kid. So I know you're super optimistic now and you have this great perspective, but there had to be some dark times as a kid coming to terms with your situation.
Oh, completely. And I think puberty kicks everyone's ass, disabled or not disabled. But there
Yes.
were times when I was like, I'm not sure I can go into the school playground for another 364 days and 5 years and just do this over and over and over and over. And there's something quite Darwinian about the high school playground. If you want to see Darwin's theory in perfect motion, with the weak coming together to be consumed by the strong, just go to a school playground and watch it happen.
Yeah.
And I think the attitude of boys will be boys, or sticks and stones can break your bones, is super archaic. Even in the 90s, it was super archaic. But now that we know more about things like mental health and what have you, and the advent of social media, oh Jesus, something Christ! If I'd have been a teenager during the rise of social media, it would have been utterly inescapable. At
Yeah.
least back then, I could go home and that was it. I didn't have to constantly look at my phone and do that doom scrolling that
Yeah.
everyone seems to love to do
Yep.
in 2021. Just turn it off and go for a walk. And yeah, no, it sucked, and it wasn't my finest 5 years, high school, and I was always really unfortunate where I was infinitely smarter than the people who were bullying me. I grew up in a lot of really wry, witty comedy. We always had like Only Fools and Horses, or Blackadder, or British Empire, or Kenny Everett, or things of that ilk on in the house. So I developed this like wicked sense of humor. So when people would say something, I'd just be like, yeah, boom, 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 boom. Kind of. Nowadays we call them pipe bombs, just
Yes.
left, right, and centre in the playground, and then I'd get in trouble, and then my parents would be called in, and they'd be like, oh, he said this. And then the
Yeah.
response is always, well, if they left him alone, he wouldn't. I don't go looking for trouble. I'll
Yeah.
gladly respond to it, but I don't go out trying to cause aggravation.
Sure. Again, it's like we're talking. It's like we're one and the same here, man. Because for me, I don't have an exact moment where I decided I wanted to make the best out of my situation. However,
Mhm.
I do remember because again, much like you, I had this wit about me that I realized that the people that were picking on me did not have. And even at times, because I'm a big fan of self-deprecating humor, when kids would make joke about my disability that I'm trying to come to terms with, I would even see that the jokes were pretty shitty, and I would say, hey, next time you go to make fun of me, why don't you try this one? And then I would make some sort of joke about my arm or my hand or whatever. And I figured if I could beat the bullies to the punch and make fun of myself better than they can, what are they ever going to make fun of me about? So like I love that you used humor to deal with that. But do you know of a moment in time where you decided you were going to look at the situation and go, this is how I was born, nothing is going to change this, I need to make the
Mhm.
best of this? Or were you kind of always like that?
No, I wasn't always like that. And I think that idea of self fulfillment and self development and finding out who you are takes a really long time,
Yeah.
particularly when you're in an environment like the school playground or social media that's always telling you, hey, you should be like this, you should be like this, just do it because you're worth it. Roscoe Chicken and Waffles or whatever. And it's a case of developing an emotional intelligence to be able to see through the haze and be able to see through the bullshit and think through it, that you can finally get there. And
Yeah.
for me, leaving high school not doing that well, certainly not doing as well as I could have done, was a real wake up moment for me. And then you've got to sit down, have a really hard conversation with yourself, and be like, what kind of guy do you want to be? Because from the ages of 16 to 21, the person you become then is more than likely going to be the person you are for the rest of your life. So I advise you don't become a dickhead in those 5 years. That's the best advice I've ever given myself: is don't become a dickhead in those 5 years. Like high school, no one cares, but like adolescence and adulthood, people are going to be watching you, and those impressions stick.
Yeah.
So yeah, I went home. I had a long, hard conversation with myself, and also you learn how to be a good person, maybe by being a not so good one for a while, and realizing what attitudes do and don't work, what approaches do and don't work, and what doesn't land in terms of social interaction. And so then you put your head down and you make a conscious decision to wake up every day and try and be a better person than you were yesterday. But if you fail, also know that there's grace for that, and that no one's expecting perfection from you.
That's all sound advice. Now, you ended up eventually going to university and you'd get a degree in business management. And we know you've gone on to do such incredible things in film and TV, incredible documentaries that you've been a part of and made. And I want to talk about all that. Growing up, though, what did you think you would become as an adult? Like, what career did you sort of gravitate towards when you imagined your adulthood?
So this all changes because, again, going back to my kids being dumb point, when I was 3, I wanted to be a train, not a train driver, actual flipping train.
I love that so much. So,
So,
like, what kind of train were you? Like, lay this out for me. What do you look like as a train?
here's how train obsessed I was. I grew up on like Thomas the Tank Engine.
Okay.
And so I'd heard, and I'd hang about with like my dad and his friends quite a lot, and they talk about the Beatles, and I generally thought they were talking about insects, and then I heard one say Ringo Starr, and I was just like, oh, from Thomas the Tank Engine, and all these grown men just turn around and stare at this stupid child
Love it. That's awesome.
who thinks Ringo Starr's claim to fame is Thomas the Tank Engine and nothing else.
I mean, why wouldn't you think that? Makes the most logical sense.
It does. It does.
But after the
But then,
train phase, what was next?
stand-up comedian, which sort of happened,
Yeah.
and then I wanted to get into marketing and communications, marcoms, and then in the last year of my degree, I had this real crisis of, I don't know, identity. I kind of learned all these things about advertising that really rubbed me up the wrong way. That a lot of it seemed to be either preying on people's insecurities or selling them almost this false hope. That if you buy this product, do these things, it all seems based on pragmatism. That if it doesn't work, leaves people feeling empty and hollow. And I had to ask myself, do I want to be part of that system? Do I want to be the guy that sells another guy some deodorant thinking that he's going to get laid? And, when he's not.
Right. I mean, would you like to think
Or
that,
do I
but,
want to, or do I want to be the guy that tells women that if you get your nose done, your boobs done, and get your teeth whitened, you'll be happy, you'll never have a dull day again, and you'll walk down the street singing while birds and rabbits come and chat to you. And when nothing could be further from the actual reality for a lot of people.
right.
So I took a year out, and I worked for my church for a year doing the student ministry, doing sort of like admin, event organizing, and sending emails, making coffee, and what have you. And then applied for a job in radio at the BBC, didn't get it, and just got stuck in a job in TV commissioning. And I really took to it, and I knew I was going to be there on like a 6-month contract. And by this point, I was like this braggadocious 22, 23, 24-year-old.
Yeah.
And so I quickly worked out who all the important people on that department were. And commissioning is like the power department of TV. That's where the big power players are. It's the in wrestling they call it creative. If creative like you, you're set. If commissioning like you, you're also quite well set. And so I emailed every person I had no business talking to, just saying, "Hi, I'm kind of new. Quite want your job when I'm older. Can we get coffee and we just harass you for half an hour?" Because the worst anyone can do in that situation is email me back and go, "You're wasting my time, you dickhead." And I know all those things already. I've lost nothing in that interaction. But
Sure.
Everyone said yes. Everyone. And then I had the ears and the attention of all these commissioners who quite liked the cut of my jib because I'd researched them heavily, like almost obsessively. Kind of GTV style research here. And I could just tell them about their careers, what I liked, what I didn't like, how I thought certain things had aged. Because there's certain things that were on TV way back in the way back. If you tried to put them on now, just there would be uproar. Did you have a show called Playing It Straight in the US?
I never watched it, but I'm pretty sure we had it here. Yeah.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, Playing It Straight is The Bachelor, but half of them are gay, and she has to work out who is and who isn't gay based upon hanging out with them.
Oh,
and I wish there was more to it than that. And if I made it sound very flippant, homophobic, and offensive, that's because it is. That's because it was.
Yeah. That sounds about right. Well, to compare that, recently we've been talking about, I'm a big fan of, and we're kind of going to get off track here, but I think it's okay. I'm a big fan of terrible wrestling shirts that were created during the Attitude Era. And recently I got one of my holy grails, that being the terrible HLA shirt that was released back in 2002. And just to think that HLA was a thing that they did on television back in 2002, or really any point, is ridiculous. But even more so, Adam, I don't know if you remember this. Do you remember the backstage segments leading up to HLA on that episode of Monday Night Raw?
Is that the one where Eric Bischoff forced himself on Linda McMahon?
No.
Another time.
That's another time that was sort of awkward and weird that they did a year later.
For legal reasons, in a wrestling storyline, not in real life.
Right.
Hi, Eric. Hope you're good.
Yes. No. So HLA was hot lesbian action. And the thing that I look back at that was the weirdest part of the whole thing was in the backstage segment, Spike Dudley is walking down the hallway and he looks at the locker room door where these girls are staying at for the night. And the locker room door, when you go back to a backstage segment and The Rock's in his locker room, it usually says The Rock or Stone Cold Steve Austin, Brock Lesnar. This locker room door just says lesbians. And can you imagine just any time in society before or after this in which that is okay to do on TV? Like, it's crazy they did this on TNN.
Wrestling is by far the most belligerent sport on the face of the earth, isn't it? Like by far.
Yeah, it's pretty insane some of the things that happen. But so we got off track there for a second just because the absurdity and the weirdness of things that are on television. But this is what you were dealing with at the time.
Yeah, no, totally. And then I sort of, when my contract finished, I got sent to one of the channel heads sent me to his friend's company for what was meant to be 2 weeks work experience. That then became a month, became 2 months. Then I got like a presenting gig. Then I got some documentaries. Then I became like a casting researcher on a few things. While I was a casting researcher, I auditioned for the role in Under the Skin, the Scarlett Johansson film,
Yes.
and by hook or by crook, managed to get that. And I've been very fortunate to have been given a lot of good opportunities by some good people.
Yeah.
And right place, right time, right attitude.
Well, let's talk about the role in Under the Skin for a second because it's a super compelling role, and obviously you got to work alongside one of the biggest actresses in all of Hollywood. But from what I understand, you almost didn't make it to the audition. You had a little bit of an accident.
That is putting it lightly. That is absolutely putting it lightly. An accident, my friend, is wetting yourself on the way. I went one. I went a lot bigger than that. I spinal tapped that. I turned it up to 11. I got hit by a black cab on the way to the audition and broke my leg. And like properly, like Sid broke my leg.
Oh my God.
And knee pointing one way, foot pointing the other way. And then adrenaline kicks in, and I call the director, and like, hey, funny story, been hit by a car and my leg's broken. I'm gonna be like 10 minutes late. Still really keen. Don't think I'm not keen. I'm just gonna be late. Then hung up the phone, called my mum, and told her the same thing. To which she said it was gonna happen one day. I'll see you at UCL, which is the hospital that I would get taken to.
Sure.
And then he signs me. So my first impression to this very world-renowned director is me under a taxi, at this point in just my pants, surrounded by paramedics, high as giraffe ass on morphine, and we have a conversation that goes, he says, bloody hell, Adam, I didn't realise you did your own stunt work, to which I reply, do I look like I've got a fucking stunt double? That was my first impression.
I love that so much. Well, obviously it led to you getting the role, and I mean, it had to be a pretty surreal experience to work with Scarlett Johansson.
She's absolutely great. We had a couple of meetings beforehand because I didn't know definitively it was her at the time. About 6 weeks after I broke my leg, so I'm out of a hard cast. So I've got one crutch support, and I went to Elstree Studios in London to meet the lady I'd be working with. And at this point, I'd done a bit of research into the film and found out who was funding it and who they normally go for and work with. And I geared myself up to meet Olivia Colman. This was pre the Oscar, kind of around. She'd just done Tyrannosaur, which is incredible. If you haven't seen Tyrannosaur or Peep Show, that's what I really knew her for. I was like, oh my word, she's in Peep Show. So I was already quite excited. And then I walk into this room, like, as much swag as one can with a recovering from a broken leg. I went, hi, I'm Adam. And then this woman stands up and goes, hi, I'm Scarlett. And I have a mini freak out, and I just go, yes, you are.
That's awesome. I love that. I mean, like, it's a bit jarring.
And then we sat down and had a couple of meetings to discuss the character, the scene, what would, because she drives around in this van, kind of picking up wayward men to take them back to this place and kill them. And so we're just like, if a pretty lady pulled up to you in a van in real life and offered you a lift, would you get in? And I'm like, categorically no. That's how children go missing. And so we had to kind of construct something that would make it work and make it believable, but also be quite tense but quite soft.
Sure.
And in the actual scene, we don't have lines per se. We've got bullet points we have to hit, and we've both got earpieces in, so that the director, who's in the back of the van with like hair and makeup, can kind of give us a bit of direction. And so where they're hitting all these points, and it's a night shoot. It's bitterly cold. I'm trying not. I'm still freaking out that I'm in a van with Scarlett Johansson. And this is my first acting gig. I've got no idea what I'm doing. I'm superiorly under-equipped to be here. And then I got Jonathan in my ear, he's going, "Come on, Pearson, you're in a van with Scarlett Johansson. Get your shit together." But no, it's thoroughly great. Love Jonathan Glazer, the director. Still see him on, obviously not as regularly as I'd like to because of COVID. Scarlett Johansson, amazingly kind, amazingly funny, and I'm forever grateful to her for being so patient with me and being a real safe set of hands to do my first acting gig with. Because there are other actresses who I think could have been far less patient and far less kind.
I'm glad that experience was great. But, in doing my research, I went out of my way to watch the documentary, The Ugly Face of Disability Hate Crimes, which was made back in 2015. And I love documentaries. I found this super compelling. And I guess sometimes I don't stop to think about the discrimination that we face as disabled individuals, because it's so much just a part of our lives. And you touched on a lot of interesting things during this documentary. One of those things being just the fact that when disabled people are discriminated against, sometimes they don't even mention it. It's just one of those things that it just goes under the radar, which it got me to thinking about so many situations in my lifetime where I didn't even address the situation. I just did my best to let it go and move on. But the one thing that struck me as jarring was that the hate crimes for religious and racist hate crimes, there's a far greater punishment than that of if a hate crime occurs for disabled people. Like, for example, the example you use being that if you get punched in the face, for you, it's, I believe, 6 months in jail. And then if it's for someone of a religious orientation or something of color, it ends up being 2 years. So talk to me about the experience creating that documentary, and in the years that have passed since it came out, do you think there's been a change?
So that documentary was utterly fascinating to me because it's such a murky and also very much undiscussed thing. As you say, when you're disabled, there's this almost fatalistic self-acceptance of this is how life is for me, which is why we tend to overlook kind of discrimination or inequality, and but also not everything bad that happens to me is a hate crime or discrimination. If I jump off the roof of my house and hurt myself, gravity doesn't hate disabled people. I'm just being an idiot. So there are levels to this, like there are with everything. But and these statistics are a really complicated way by which to measure progress, because statistics go up. Does that mean there's more hate crime as a whole, or does that mean people are recognizing it more and reporting it more? Which is, and it's super complicated, which is why I thought doing a documentary on it would be super interesting. Kind of, where's the line? How do we handle this? And where does this fit into our overall understanding of equality? Because if you've created legislation that's specifically designed to protect minority groups and have called it the Equality Act, surely they should all have equal levels of protection. And it creates this weird, almost oppression Olympics in a conversation that should really be about everyone.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's a fair way of putting it. And, one thing that I found most fascinating about the whole story really throughout the whole documentary, and if you guys haven't seen it, you can watch it for free on YouTube right now. That's how I watched it, and it was definitely worth my time. The thing that I found most interesting is the way that, we touched on it a little bit earlier, but the way you combat the way that people approach you having disabilities with the comedy and sort of addressing the situation. I mean, you've gone through your whole life in situations where people have probably mistreat you or, without even realize it, awkwardly stare at you. But the way you combat that is what I found most fascinating and, quite frankly, inspiring. And just the fact that by the end of this documentary, you find the courage to take your humor, which you've used to combat this your whole life, and go on stage and do stand-up comedy. That's a brave thing to do. Even as a performer, sitting here myself telling you, as a pro wrestler who walks around half naked in spandex, I think I'm a funny guy, but I don't know if I would have the courage to go up on stage and do stand-up. So talk to me about that experience. And is it something that you've done since? Is it something that you want to do again?
It's something I want to do again. I have done it since, absolutely, and most time it's gone well. You need to. One of the big things with stand-up comedy is know your audience and like read the room.
Yeah.
And I did one open mic night at this comedy thing in Brooklyn, New York, and I had underestimated how woke Brooklyn is. And so I went in like super dark, like opened it with the whole. Well, I couldn't do the you might because like normally in the UK I open with "Hi, I'm Adam Pearson. You might recognize this from the TV. I've got one of those faces," but I'm not famous in Brooklyn, so I can't do that. And so I walked on stage with a pint of beer, took a sip and went, craft beer. I like my beer how I like my violence, domestic. And just stunned silence, like the sound of 20 anuses snapping shut and mild booing.
I love that. Well, see, here's the thing, and based on that joke, you strike me as a man who has a morbid sense of humor, and like I often, as I've transitioned into doing motivational speaking over the years, there's something about, how do I put this? The way I talk, whether it's to young or old, children or adults, I don't want to lose my voice or my sense of humor. But even I have to realize at times that, in life with my friends and often on this podcast, I make jokes about my mom who, while it was a serious situation, she was a drug addict. She smoked crack. And so sometimes not only do I make my disability awkward for people, but I make these crackhead mom jokes that are very much uncomfortable and maybe not the best situation. So I try to, you got to find some sort of equal ground. And really, you do have to know your audience, but like your stand up, other than the the domestic violence joke, how morbid do you get in the stand up?
I always try and keep it. If I'm going to go for disability, I'll keep it very self-deprecating. I think I never punch down is my rule.
Sure.
Never punch down. Always punch outwards or upwards. Satire is all about punching upwards. And I also think offence more often than not is taken and not caused. And I think comedy is one of the last bastions of free speech we have left
For sure.
in 2021.
Yes.
And
100%.
so I won't defend bad comedy, but I'll defend people's right to try and joke about whatever they want.
Yeah, 100%. Well, so I brought up motivational speaking, and that's something that I've been real drawn about you watching a couple of your speaking engagements on the internet. How's that something that you went into, and based on everything else that you've done in TV, movies, how does that compare? What kind of feeling do you get from doing these speaking engagements?
I thoroughly enjoy the speaking engagements, and then that's just something I sort of did once, and it turned out I was quite good at it, and so people kept asking me to do it. And now that I'm all grown up, a lot of the people who I grew up with have gone on to become teachers and what have you. So I do a lot of school assemblies, and I think the younger you can get to people about things like disability, the more accepting they are of it. And young people have got like very porous minds, and that you can feed into it a lot easier. And you can, if they're in sort of like unhelpful thought patterns, you can kind of break those down a lot easier than with older people who are very much set in their ways. And I also think it's really important for younger disabled people to see older disabled people who are successful, who've done it, who they can identify with. I think having role models is always super important. When I was younger, I didn't think disabled people were allowed on TV because there weren't any. And there comes a point when you have to stop looking for role models and start becoming one. And being that person that people can look to, but not copy. Emulate, don't imitate.
Yeah.
and think, yeah, if they can do it, then I can do it. And I always say that to young people. I'm like, hey, I did it, and I'm an idiot. So you can absolutely do it.
Same. I'm 100% a moron, but like somehow I've managed to, I don't know, and I feel like you're a lot the same way. If you can be an open book and vulnerable and you can openly share your story as much as you do, I think it's a big deal to these kids and to adults too, because like, look, kind of like you touched on, I wish that someone like you or myself would have came to my school when I was in elementary school or middle school, because it might have sped up the process in which I had more confidence in myself. Like I don't know where my confidence really came from. I guess somewhere down within, and just at some point you need to stop believing in the lies that people tell you, and you just kind of come to terms with the way you are. And something that you often talk about in interviews is being normal and how boring it would be to be normal. So I want to ask you a pretty important question that I often think about, because I've been asked this before. People will ask me and have asked me, if they came out with a way to fix your cerebral palsy, if they could make your other hand fully functional, would you do it? And without even thinking about it, if you would have asked me when I was a kid, 100% would want to fix my hand. But now as an
Mm-hmm.
adult and living my whole life with it, I often say no, because I'm happy with who I am and I've come to terms with it, and it makes me different and it makes me stand out, and I'm proud to be me. So I say that to ask you, if there was something to come along that could fix NF and take away your facial disfigurement, would that be something you change about yourself?
No, not at all. This face does a lot of heavy lifting for my shit personality. So
I
if
love you so
I
much.
if I lose that, I've got nothing.
Uh,
But also, people talk about, because 80% of disabilities are acquired, kind of 18 to 65, and people often talk about how difficult it is transitioning from being non-disabled to disabled. And if that transition's hard, think how hard it is going the other way.
yeah. Yeah. I can't even imagine. Like, people walk up to me all the time and they go, "What's it like wrestling with one arm?" And I go, I don't fucking know. I've never wrestled with two. You know what I mean? This is
Yeah,
just the way I am. So like,
yeah, yeah.
I,
Well,
I'm, I,
what am I comparing this to?
right. Like, I'm okay with who I am. And I think it's a pretty powerful thing. And I guess for us, and maybe you think differently, but when someone walks up to me and says you're an inspiration, I guess I can understand why they say that. But at the end of the day, when I look in the mirror, I'm just me, and I'd like to
Mm-hmm.
think that in some ways. Look, to be transparent, having a disability probably pushed me to work a little bit harder than I do. But I'd like to think at the end of the day, if I would have just been some random 5'4" guy without a disability, I would be doing a lot of the same things that I am right now. So like for you, when someone says you're an inspiration, do you respect that? Or is it there's just part of you that is just like, I'm just Adam and I'm just doing this because this is what I like to do?
It's always important to respect and honor people's good intentions. And so but the word inspiration, I have a love hate relationship with it, because very often as you say, I'm not doing anything outside of the ordinary, and I don't want things to go down this simple Jack Tropic Thunder route of I wipe my own ass, therefore I can kind of thing. So
Sure.
when people say you're an inspiration, my response is thank you. What have I inspired you to do? What actions are now part of your life because of what I or another has taught you?
Yeah.
What happens now? I've inspired you. Great. How does that manifest in your life?
Yeah. I mean, that's an important question to ask. And I think when we look at the people that we look up to and idolize and look at as role models, when we do call them inspirations, I think it's important to look at them and why are we inspired by them and how can we apply that to our lives? I think that's something very important to take home in this interview. But before we end this, I want to talk a little bit more about wrestling, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
As a lifelong fan, there's certain matches and moments that we're drawn to. You talked about the Survivor Series Deadly Games tournament and how it sort of sets you to be a fan for life. Do you have a all-time favorite professional wrestling match, or a couple matches that you lean to? Like if you were to go back and say, this is the match that I can watch on repeat, what match would that be?
Okay. Rock Hogan, Mania 18.
Yes, great choice.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I think there's only like 4 bumps in the whole match, but
For sure.
But it's amazing.
It's awesome. And you know what? Going back and watching that match now, knowing how wrestling is with small crowds or no crowds at all, the crowd plays such an important role in that match and makes it so much bigger and more powerful than it could have ever been if it would have been in the Thunderdome.
Yeah, completely. Like completely. And that match is great. After it was on, I felt so bad for Triple H and Chris Jericho.
Oh yeah.
It was like that follow that moment. It was the same with Triple H and Randy Orton at Mania 25 when they were like, yeah, take Michaels.
Yeah. Well, you know what? But also too, I've often said that about WrestleMania 25, but if you remember, they started that match with a pedigree and an RKO, and then they went for like 20 minutes after that. And look, Randy Orton and Triple H are in much better positions than I'm in. They've done a lot more as a wrestler than I do. But I remember thinking even back then, pedigree, RKO, geez, where do you go from here? And also, I wonder if they actually planned that originally, or if they saw how good Undertaker and Shawn Michaels were, and they go, you know what? We need to do something drastic to start this match. Let's hit our finishes.
Yeah, just like called and audible.
Right.
There and then. They could have done anything, and the crowd would have shot on it at that point.
For sure.
I said this on a podcast, and it got me in a lot of trouble, but I stand by it. They halfway through that match, they could have cured cancer, and people still would have shot on it.
Did I mention I love you?
Because that's what wrestling fans do.
They really do. I've never seen a community of people that dislike something so much that they keep watching each and every week. Like I put out a tweet last night after Elimination Chamber, something to the effect of, wow, the ending of that pay-per-view has inspired me to never watch a pay-per-view on the WWE Network again until the next one comes out on Peacock. Can't wait for that one.
Yeah, no, it is literally that. Just Twitter right now is just sort of, oh, I hate this company. See you Monday. That's essentially what everyone's saying.
So are there any other matches that you look to right away as like, this is a match I can watch over and over again?
Omega Okada, the first one.
Classic. Legendary.
That was my introduction to New Japan.
Really?
Like, I hadn't watched any of it, and a friend of mine sent it to me and was like, you have to watch this.
Yeah.
And I was like, mate, it's 52 minutes. Jog on. And he was like, no, trust me. You absolutely have to watch this.
Yeah, that's a roller coaster ride.
I watched it and I tweeted, then I texted the same thing back going, coffee now. And then we went and got coffee. And I just asked him about New Japan for like an hour. And he told me to watch all this other stuff. Like he turned me on to the old kind of King's Road stuff.
Sure.
And now whenever I want to watch a random New Japan match, I'll either text him or I'll message Tempest from Wrestle Talk on Twitter and be like, just send me some random Japanese stuff. I trust your judgment.
Well, you should be really pumped then now that you're a New Japan fan, with New Japan sort of coming into AEW. You have Impact working with AEW. What do you think about Impact and AEW? You're a fan? Do you like what they're doing?
I am all on board with that. When Kenta turned up and attacked Moxley, I lost my tiny mind.
It was a pretty powerful moment, right?
Because I love Kenta. I don't know how he had an unfortunate run in NXT, where he spent like a lot of it injured.
For sure.
But also, I just don't think they know what to do with those kind of guys.
Yeah.
Like, I know we talk about we moan about it, but I watch it, which is completely true. But how do you pluck up Ricochet? How do you have Ricochet on your roster and mess that up?
I don't know. I mean, he was without question the top guy in Lucha Underground. I spent a lot of time with Ricochet over the years. You know, back in the day, he slept over Gargano in my house. He's a good friend. It's weird, but you'd like to think that if he stays with WWE, I don't know what's going to happen, but once his contract is up, if he goes somewhere else, it's going to be interesting to see how quickly he becomes a star that he very rightfully should be. But in mentioning that, do you have like 3 all-time favorite wrestlers that you lean towards when you think about, like, man, if this were to summarize my wrestling fandom, I go to these 3 guys?
Bret Hart, Kurt Angle, and Antonio Cesaro, Claudio Castagnoli.
Man, those are all good choices. And so I would imagine you were really rooting for Cesaro to finally get his due last night in the chamber, huh?
I completely and utterly was, and I, to this day, I am still bitterly disappointed that at one point in time, Vincent Kennedy McMahon had Chris Hero and Claudio Castagnoli in the same company at the same time and didn't do it.
It's crazy.
You put them together, you move heaven and earth and pay whatever the Briscoes are asking for, and you give me that damn match at WrestleMania, Vince. And I will never forgive you for not doing it.
That would have been a sight to see. Now, I also love Kurt Angle and Bret Hart. Give me the best Bret Hart match and give me the best Kurt Angle match, in your opinion, of course.
Okay, best Bret Hart match is the Austin match at WrestleMania 13, the double turn. It is the perfect match.
It's amazing.
And the best Kurt Angle match, that is a lot trickier.
I know.
It's either the Chris Benoit main event from the Royal Rumble 2003. I think 2003.
Yep.
The Iron Man match with Brock Lesnar on that random SmackDown.
Dude, no one talks about that match, and it's so good. And the one thing that sticks out to me is the psychology in the match. Not only was it a great technical wrestling match, and that is the Brock Lesnar that I love more than anything, is that technical wrestling badass Brock Lesnar. But in that match, he does the spot where he cracks Kurt Angle with a chair and gets disqualified. And the ref's like, what are you doing? Disqualification. But Brock did that because he didn't care if he was down by a fall. He did that so he got the advantage. And that one chair shot set the tone for the rest of the match, and it gave him the advantage that ended up him winning the WWE Championship back on that SmackDown.
It's amazing ring psychology. Just hit it with a chair. It's like, disqualified. Brock's like, fair enough. Picks him up, F5s him, gets the pin back, and you're just like,
It's good stuff, man.
Disqualify me now, bitch.
It was a great feud in 2003, and I feel like it somehow sort of gets glossed over. But man, I love that run with Angle. Arguably one of the best of all time. It's a shame that he didn't have a bigger going away celebration when he retired this past year. But Kurt Angle, definitely one of the all-time greats.
Yeah, honorable mention goes to the King of the Ring street fight with Shane McMahon.
Oh,
any match where you nearly kill the owner's son has to wind up on a list somewhere.
That match is one of those matches that ranks right up there with Foley and Undertaker, where no matter how many times you watch it, because of the risk and the violence involved, and in retrospect, the real injuries that happen in those matches, it never stops being surreal to watch.
No, it doesn't. And none of those things do. I always have whenever I'm working, like writing a speech or firing off emails or what have you, I've always got the network on in the background. And I had the Royal Rumble 2000 on. And you know those times when one of your family who doesn't watch wrestling walks in the room while you're watching wrestling? Yeah, like pedigree on the Sontags. That's the moment my mom decides to come and put washing on the radiators.
Yes.
And I'm like, I'd rather you have walked in during that Mae Young segment than this.
No.
Like, the Mae Young thing, I could just explain away and tell you it was porn. Whereas I can't explain this away.
I think I would have went the other direction. I would have not. I definitely wouldn't want my parents to walk in when that Royal Rumble 2000 contest with the ladies was happening, because that was incredibly awkward. But we talked about the beginning of your fandom, how important the Attitude Era was. This might be a weird question, but when I think about my favorite year of professional wrestling, for some reason, and I think it's nostalgia, I always lean towards 1991 because I think it's the first full year that I really remember about professional wrestling. And while it's probably not the best year for the WWF, it's the year that I lean towards where because I that's just where I became a fan. And even though some of those pay-per-views are kind of meh, like WrestleMania 7 with Slaughter and Hogan, and SummerSlam 91 is one of the best pay-per-views of all time. Undertaker wins the
Yeah.
belt from Hogan at Survivor Series 91. Do you have a favorite year of professional wrestling?
I am a huge fan of 2000 and let me think, let me do the maths. 2003.
2003 is great. Why do you love 2003?
Well, Mania 19 was really good Royal Rumble, and it was a solid year for WWE. Like loads of great matches. Like that year's SummerSlam from top to bottom was a banger.
Great card.
And then you also have the rise of TNA
Yes.
going on at the same time.
Yeah.
You've got Christopher Daniels, AJ Styles, and Samoa Joe single-handedly changing the indie scene.
Yeah, no, it was an amazing time for pro wrestling. It was definitely a transitional phase after the downfall of WCW and ECW. But I too look at it as one of the funnest years of professional wrestling. 2002, 2003, 2004. It's weird at times, but a lot of the things that happened not only on top in WWE, but as you alluded to, what was happening on the Indies and in TNA, it sort of set the pace for where we are right now today with professional wrestling in 2021. They changed the game.
Completely. That because WWE have always had this problem of, oh, we didn't create that here, therefore it isn't any good. And now I think they realise the value of what's going on elsewhere. And with the rise of things like AEW, the way New Japan have finally got their global distribution down, and a sort of the old forbidden door, so to speak, it's a really exciting time to be a wrestling fan. And I reckon there's going to be a lot of guys who weren't getting their dues in WWE suddenly getting their dues because they know they've got a lot of very good options now.
Yeah.
And they don't have to they no longer have to take table scraps from the big guys. They can be like, well, I'm going to go to another part of Florida for a vacation. With my wife, Selena Vega. I will see you later, Vincent, man.
I really hope you're right in that regard because there are a lot of options out there. And sometimes, look, I have a lot of friends in WWE. Sometimes the money is nice, but being able to be creative is such a powerful thing in professional wrestling. When you lose that element of creativity, I think your love sort of dies a little bit. And we don't want the love to die for professional wrestling. But you know what? One thing that I loved was this conversation with you today, Adam. Like, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to talk with me. But before we wrap this up, there's one thing that I ask everybody, and I could talk to you about wrestling and life all day. Maybe we'll have to do this another round, but the one thing that I ask everybody, what inspires you? What keeps you going, Adam?
And again, this is going to sound utterly cliche. I have always been inspired and will always be inspired by my mother. Absolutely.
That's awesome. What is it about your mom that pushes you to be the guy that you are?
Well, she too is very much a no bullshit kind of woman who also has like weird quirks and does dumb things, but it's still like she hoovered the Hoover today. She got a smaller Hoover and used it to hoover the bigger Hoover. I don't understand.
What the hell? I love it.
I know. But no, she she's still with my dad. They had good marriage, raised 2 kids really well, and it's the old "I'll always love you, Adam Henry Pearson. I don't always like you, but you're my son, and I'll always love you." And she told me what I had to hear. I would be a shell of the man I am if it wasn't for those two kicking my ass and yelling at me as and when needed. Loving correction with volume. That's all discipline is at the end of the day.
Well, I got to say, in my opinion, you're a hell of a man, and I'm glad that your parents created you, and I'm happy that we had this conversation. And if someone wanted to find you on social media or contact you to book you for anything, how would they do so?
So you can find me on the old Twitter sphere at Adam_Pearson. For bookings, contact my agent Andrew at andrewroachtalent.com. That email is also in my Twitter bio. And those are the best ways to get hold of me and book me, you know, weddings, funerals, bar mitzvahs. If you need a special guest referee to get your disability numbers up on a show, I'm always I can count to 3. Just
I love you so much. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me, and I look forward to hanging out with you again soon.
absolutely.
That was the interview with Adam Pearson. I thank him for taking the time out of his busy schedule to talk with me, and I know he doesn't like being called an inspiration, but he definitely is. And
You know what?
what?
I think we should make him the Iron on Wrestling IOW official, Adam Pearson.
I don't know what you're trying. Are you trying to do like a funny Adam Pearce thing right now or something?
Huh?
What are you doing?
Adam Pearce.
Yeah.
He could be the official of IOW. If we need a match scheduled or anything.
Okay. So you're trying to do an Adam Pearce thing. Okay. Anyways, I want to end the show this week by talking about this episode of Wrestling Challenge from January 16th, 1988 that you brought to my attention.
Yes, I did bring it to your attention. You know, part of getting through COVID has been me discovering WWF in the late 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Again, rediscovering, I should say.
Sure.
But I found bootleg episodes that were on YouTube. So a lot of times you get music that has been replaced if you're watching this on the network,
Mm-hmm.
but you're getting the original music. So on some episodes, like Junkyard Dog will come out, and he'd come out to Another One Bites the Dust by Queen. And those things are fun to me.
Yeah. Well, I always like having the original music.
Yes.
You know?
All right, so what did you like about it? You watched it.
Well, I just wanted to kind of run through this episode and some of the highlights real quick. I mean, right off the bat, the show starts off with them thanking the local mayor of the town.
That's
Because, you know, they would actually do that quite often on Challenge and on Superstars. Whatever arena they were running, they would send a shout-out to that mayor.
Yeah, it would either be the mayor or the building director.
Yeah, and so I want to play you some audio of this mayor real quick. I think it's pretty interesting.
This is Mayor Bill Boner. I want to welcome the World Wrestling Federation to Nashville, Tennessee, the country music capital of the world, and especially to their event here at the Municipal Auditorium. Hello, everyone.
Yep. Well, that's
So,
unfortunate.
we're fucking 12 for laughing at this. But at the same time, in all fairness to us, this is the late 80s, right?
Yeah.
And you're somebody of significance. You're the mayor. Maybe you say that your name is pronounced Bonner, and you should say, I'm Bill Bonner.
Yeah. Well, if my name was Boner,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be telling people that my name was Boner.
Right.
It's just,
Especially, like I said, you know, it's pronounced Bonner.
yeah. Awful situation.
Or we just change it all together.
Well, here's also something that I found interesting from this episode, which you actually didn't remember. You had to go back and watch it. I want to play you an audio clip of Gorilla Monsoon giving a rundown of the match card for the evening.
Yep.
And his mentioning of Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
It's unbelievable, the lineup of talent here in the World Wrestling Federation. We're going to be taking a look at the policeman. Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Some policeman. Not a friend of yours, Brain, that's for sure. Also, special interview section.
Okay, what?
The policeman.
What does that mean? I literally, after I heard that, I started looking up Jim Duggan and typing the policeman because I was like, what the fuck? Why would he call him the policeman?
because he had just been pulled over by the police with the Iron Sheik and got busted for cocaine.
Did that just happen?
The year before?
But also, why would you call him the policeman?
It's a rib.
That's not a good rib. What if maybe you called him like the weed man, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, the coke man, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, whatever fucking drug he had.
Yeah.
But why the policeman?
I swear, the first thing I thought was, oh my gosh. I remember he had just gotten busted not too long ago by the police. He had just come back, I believe. He was out of the WWF. He had gotten fired. And then he was brought back because I think the main thing people were upset with was that it wasn't the drugs he got busted with, because everybody doing drugs then.
Yeah.
It was that he was breaking kayfabe and riding with the Iron Sheik.
Still, calling him the policeman.
I like it. I think it's hilarious.
Seems weird. Just to kind of give you a run through of some of the stuff that happens on the card. There's a match between Jake the Snake Roberts and a jobber by the name of Gino Carabello. And this dude is bumping his ass off for Jake Roberts. He definitely was trying to earn a job. He takes the DDT and he looks like he dies on it.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. Definitely worth watching. Craig DeGeorge makes a couple cameos on here, and I love me some Craig DeGeorge, but I don't like him as much as Sean Mooney. Dino Bravo.
No.
What?
Let me talk about Craig DeGeorge for a second.
Go ahead.
So I watch further episodes, like later down the line, and maybe earlier than this episode. And Gorilla Monsoon and Vince McMahon definitely call him Greg DeGeorge.
Okay.
And I think they're doing it just to kind of shit on him and to rip him.
Maybe.
Especially Gorilla, because, again, he's calling Hacksaw the policeman.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, they're calling him Greg. I heard it, and it's throughout the entire episode that they do this.
Dino Bravo and Frenchie Martin appear on the show, and no one cares, but they're hyping up the bench press for the Royal Rumble, which we've talked about several times on the podcast and how terrible that is. Mm-hmm. Demolition, they appear on the show. I went back and I forgot how much I enjoyed their finisher.
Yeah. Back then, man, and it looked like it was... it was decapitating people because, they called it the Demolition Decapitation.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I really like that move.
The old backbreaker into the elbow drop there, that was pretty cool. Double team I enjoyed. But let's go to the point in which I wanted to bring this up. Because I tried to do some research, and maybe if there's somewhere out there who can do some further research as to whether they mentioned anything on the Superstars and or Wrestling Challenge after the fact. This is 1 week away from the original Royal Rumble event that took place in 1988. Again, this is January 16th, 1988. And there's an interesting promo that happens backstage to hype up the Royal Rumble, which features Mean Gene and Ron Bass. And I want to play it for you right now because the rules of this match are quite interesting.
All right, hi again, everybody. Next Sunday night, Cops Coliseum from Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. A wrestling spectacular that people are going to be watching all over the world. They're going to have their ear to the ground because you're going to be seeing 20 of the best in the World Wrestling Federation in a first ever Rumble Royal. More on that in a moment or two. But prior to the Rumble Royal, Ricky Steamboat will be facing Ravishing Rick Rude. 2 out of 3 falls. The Young Stallions are going to be going against the Islanders, Haku and Tama. They've just been reinstated into action in the World Wrestling Federation. Also, the ladies' champs, 2 out of 3. The Glamour Girls are going to be challenged by the Jumping Bomb Angels. 20 of the best World Wrestling Federation superstars will participate in this Rumble Royal. Come on in,
Too long off, is it, Mean Gene? You know something? You look out down that card, it's going to be a Rumble Royal, baby. And what that is, they put numbers in a hat, and you reach in there, you grab one up, and if you're number 1, brother, you got a long night ahead of you. But if you're number 20, you might just have it easy. It might slide right in there. But let me me tell you something. There'll be no tag teams. There'll be nobody partners. It's all one-on-one. That means that you're going to have to be mean. You're going to have to be nasty. And you're going to have to be willing to do anything and in the shape of your life. What do you want? You keep bothering me.
I want to point out a couple of things here, Ron Bass. The fact that, yes, we're going to start with numbers 1 and 2.
That's right.
Then every 2 minutes thereafter, another man will be added to the competition. But you can be eliminated, pinfall, submission, or thrown over the top. It's going to be exciting.
I like throwing people over the top rope. I think that's how I'll be eliminating people, Mean Gene. Yes, it's going to be interesting. And if you're number 1, you better be in shape, people, because you're going to be out there a long time because there's 2-minute intervals. There's going to be 20 more people coming in. So you know you're going to be out there 40 minutes. So let me tell you something. All you bad boys out there, I'm talking about Bam Bam Bigelow, Don Barranco, Jim Duggan, bunch of you guys, the Warrior, Sam Houston, all of you. You better kiss all the babies you want to. You better shake all the hands out there because you're going to have to get in the ring and you're going to have to be facing everybody that wants to beat you. And Miss Betsy, she's going to be there and she'll be on my side. And you better believe it's a rumble roll and we're taking it.
All right, here's cranked up Outlaw Ron Bass. Going to be 1 at 20 in a Rumble Royal next Sunday night from Canada.
Okay. I want to say something first before we address
Because there's a few things I want to say.
before we address the rules here. I want to say, who gives a fuck about Ron Bass?
Okay, now, I was going to start off by saying that. I wasn't going to say that exact thing. I was going to say that when I told you that I watched that episode of Primetime from 1988,
Yeah.
that was the day after this aired or something like that. Or the week. Anyway, they close, when they're rolling the credits, they close with the Outlaw Ron Bass interview that we just heard there, that promo.
That's weird.
Instead of the music, while the names are going up, and it says executive producer Bruce Pritchard, host Bobby Heenan, host Gorilla Monsoon, and all the names are going. They definitely close, and instead of music, they have Outlaw Ron Bass's promo. And my thought was, you have 20 guys in there. Why was Outlaw Ron Bass the guy you chose to explain every single rule? Because that was definitely his job there.
Yeah.
Explain that it's, every 2 minutes, and somebody's going to be in there 40 minutes, and you better be in the best shape of your life, and you're picking numbers out of a hat, and, yeah.
Interesting that Gene says that the original rules here are that you could win the Rumble Royale, that they keep calling it throughout the whole show, by elimination over the top, but also pinfall or submission, which is why I want to know what the follow-up was the next week when they talked about the Rumble Royale. Are they still calling it the Rumble Royale? And is pinfall and submissions mentioned as a thing? Or is that something that was quickly dropped? Or is that just something that Mean Gene said because he thought that was part of the rules? I feel like Gene wouldn't just say that if it wasn't something that was fed to him.
That might have been the original. We got to find out, because they did test runs of these Rumble Royals.
Yeah.
On house shows.
I mean, there's nothing mentioned on any of the house show live results about pinfalls or submission happening.
And there were no pinfalls or submissions during that original on-television Royal Rumble.
No.
Yeah.
So
okay, that's what I thought.
Weird thing that gets mentioned. So if anybody knows or has the superstars from the following week or Wrestling Challenge and could check if that's a thing that they might have talked about at all, it'd be very interesting because it's something they clearly quickly dropped and did not occur.
Another thing, 2 other things. Let me tell you something. It was huge back then. Every wrestler said it multiple times during promos. I think that's part of why they have producers and they have them go over their promos nowadays.
Probably.
Because that was like a crutch for everybody. I watched DiBiase and Big Boss Man with Jake the Snake Roberts and that whole turn. And DiBiase gets in Boss Man's face when Boss Man's like refusing to sell out and give him the $1 million title.
Right.
And DiBiase just says over and over again, and let me tell you something. And DiBiase's a great promo. I'm not taking anything away from him.
Sure.
But he says, let me tell you something, like 6 times during the 3-minute spot. And then when it's time for Big Boss Man to retort, he says, let me tell you something, boy. I'm from Cobb County, Georgia. I can't be bought.
That's a terrible Big Boss Man impression.
Really?
Yeah.
I think it's good.
Not good.
All right, you're not
a fan.
good.
Not a fan.
So yeah, and then if you listen to anything, even from that time frame, NWA, if you're getting Ronnie Garvin, Sam Houston, have you listened to any of the Mid-Atlantics from Pritchard or Comrade's podcast with Shivani?
I have not.
Oh, you need to get there.
Yeah.
And quick.
Okay.
Those things are fantastic.
Okay.
Because they're only, less than an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And they review the whole show, and there's a lot of times, and then Shivani's explaining everything. Shivani's the best right now for me. It's just, he's so good because he was there, and he's talking about how we didn't have anything, and we need to fill 5 minutes here, so they just sent Sam Houston out for a second promo.
So weird.
Yeah, and he was like, and I was always wondering, like, why the fuck would you send out Sam Houston when he's shit?
Could have sent anyone.
Yes. So sometimes you'll get that. Ron Garvin, he's horrible.
Oh, he's not a good.
Horrible on
not
promos.
a good promo. There's
There was a last thing too, but now I can't think of why. The other thing I feel like guys could never finish a promo. So Mean Gene would just cut them off while they were ranting because they had, so many guys don't have a finish to their promos.
which is why it's important to have a Mean Gene type
Yep.
person.
And while this dude would go on rambling, it sounded perfect that he was wrapping up at that point.
Yeah.
Because this guy wasn't going to say anything that closed the promo with something good.
There is a few more things on the show, which include a Bad News Brown promo, Van Horn versus Rick Rude, which I don't know why you'd name yourself that, but I do remember Van Horn.
I remember him.
Craig DeGeorge comes back to talk more about the Rumble Royale. Ultimate Warriors on the show against the Jobber. The Bolsheviks are in action with Slick, which I always found weird. One Man Gang and Butch Reed in a 8-man tag match. But the last thing I want to play for you before we close the show today is promo from the Young Stallions, because Gorilla Monsoon sets them up for their promo to say these guys have a resolution for 1988. So let's play what that resolution is right now.
Resolution.
The Young Stallions have one thing in mind for 1988. Our resolution, and Paul's going to tell you what it's going to be.
Given our opportunity, the Young Stallions are going to go to the top of the World Wrestling Federation ladder as the best tag team for 88. That's our resolution.
Well, I hope that certainly comes true.
Okay. I like how I love how Jim Powers, who is known for his incredible cameos on the Cameo website, says our New Year's resolution, and Paul's going to tell you.
Yeah. Well, you got to throw to your partner. If you and I are cutting promos together, you got all the meat, and then you don't give me no side dish, no sizzle, no nothing.
Just he didn't even try. And then, boy, what a big time resolution to have.
Now in '87, their resolution was to be the 7th best team in the WWF.
I gotcha.
Yeah, I don't know if you watched that episode or not.
And I must have missed that one. However, they did main event the Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
The following week.
Isn't that awesome?
Technically speaking, they did. So I mean, I guess
The match was good.
yeah. Look,
And they were the inspiration for Bobby Beverly and Eric Ryan, the young studs.
they were. But yeah, I just thought that promo was terrible, and I wanted to play it. But
Hey, do you think we should still call them the young studs?
they're getting kind of old now.
Should we call them the not so young studs?
You can't. I mean, you still call Shawn Michaels a Heartbreak Kid.
I
He's
know,
definitely not a
right?
Kid. But whatever. That's another discussion for another day. But that's it for this episode of Iron on Wrestling. Thanks for tuning in. Spread the word about the podcast. If you're not following us on social media, you could do so over at Iron on Wrestling on Twitter Facebook, and Instagram. We'll be posting some pictures of Adam Pearson throughout the week. And
Do you want to post any of the pictures that I just sent you?
Nope, won't be doing that, but you should invest in Manscaped. Use promo code PARDON to save 20% off and get free shipping on your Lawnmower 3.0. Of course, you can follow me on social media at Gregory Iron on Twitter, at Gregory_Iron on Instagram. Find me on Facebook as well. Go to my website, www.gregory-iron.com. I mean, there's some stuff there, but it's being worked on right now. Hopefully someone will become my new webmaster soon and fix that. If you'd like to contact me for bookings, speaking engagements, pro wrestling seminars, go to my website, email me directly, or DM me on my social media accounts. I'll get back to you right away. Go to my Pro Wrestling Tees store at prowrestlingtees.com/Gregory Iron. Find me on Cameo. Aaron, what would you like to plug?
If you'd like to book me to help you with word searches, you can contact me. You can DM me through my Instagram, and that's at Fair to Aaron. And on Twitter, I am at Fair to Air. FAIRTOAAR. I don't know if I got anything else. My OnlyFans is being reconstructed right now.
Okay.
But once it's up and running, you'll know it's up and running.
Okay, well, that's it for the show. I got some business to take care of on my phone, and I guess with nothing else to say, come back next week, and until then, Aaron, kiss goodbye. Okay. Oh, son of a bitch. Fucking trying to text someone to open my goddamn... I got those pictures now. Fucking disgusting human being.
Huh? What do you think, though? Come on, smooth or not? Just tell the people. They want to hear. Tell them.
It's smooth.
Walking like a star for the boss man. Working for the company. Oh, yeah. Better than a dance I'm tossing. Gonna have a fantasy. Oh, yeah. Where am I gonna look? They tell me that love is blind. I really need a girl like an open book to read between the lines. Love in an elevator. Living it up when I'm gone.